Good evening. I call this February 24th, 2026 meeting of the Morrisville Town Council to order. Councilmember Scoggins-Johnson will not be participating tonight. Thank you to those here in person with us tonight, those watching via live stream, and those who are watching a recording of this meeting. Our town mission statement, which helps guide our decisions tonight and into the future, is connecting our diverse community to an enhanced quality of life through innovative programs and services. Sergeant Strickland is our Sergeant at Arms for this evening's meeting. We thank you for your attendance. This evening, I will be leading our invocation. As we gather this evening, I invite us to take a moment to reflect on the events of yesterday. Our community faced both a tragic loss of life and a devastating apartment fire. And in those moments of crisis, our first responders were there, as they always are, ready to protect, to serve, and to help our residents in their greatest time of need. It's a little echo. We are deeply grateful for their courage, their professionalism, and their steady presence. Let us also recognize the strength of our town staff and our community partners who continue to support those affected. Their compassion reminds us of what it means to be part of Morrisville. As we begin our work tonight, may we recommit ourselves to building a town that is safe, friendly, welcoming, and vibrant. May we work together with purpose and unity, always striving to serve our residents with integrity and care. All who are able at this time, please stand as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we adopt tonight's agenda, Town Council policies is to review and ensure there are no conflicts of interest or appearance of conflict of interest with any items on the agenda. Is there anything that anyone would like to share at this time? Okay. I would like to recognize the town manager at this time for a possible adjustment to the agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Mayor, I would like to request that Council consider amending the agenda to move item 12A ahead of item 11A to ensure that we address that action item before we move on to the presentations. Thank you.
Okay. Any discussion on that request? I'd entertain a motion as requested by the town manager to adopt the agenda with that change.
So moved. I'll second.
I have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Rabati, a second from Councilmember Johnson. All those in favor of this adjusted agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. We have an agenda. There is one item on this evening's consent agenda. That's the resolution recommending appointment of PZB ETJ member Arthur Blue, March 3rd, 2026 through March 2nd, 2029. Would any council member wish to pull that item for discussion? If not, is there a motion and a second to adopt the consent agenda?
I'll make the motion to adopt consent agenda.
I'll second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Johnson, a second from Councilmember Kessling. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously 6-0 as well. We have one proclamation that will be read this evening and another, the Read Across America Day, simply listed for reference on our agenda. I'd like to recognize Councilmember Kessling, who will read the proclamation recognizing Black History Month, and then ask a guest to come up to the dais to be presented to. Sir?
Thank you, Mayor Crowley. Whereas Black History Month is observed annually across the United States in February and serves as a celebration of African American achievements, as well as a time to recognize the crucial role they have played in U.S. history. And whereas in 1915, Dr. Carter Godwin Woodson, a noted African American scholar and son of formerly enslaved people, founded the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, which was later renamed the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, ASALH. And whereas Dr. Woodson initiated Black History Week, February 12, 1926, which was celebrated the second week of February for many years, as this coincided with the birthdays of Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln. In 1976, as part of the nation's bicentennial, Black History Week was expanded and became established as Black History Month. And whereas observing Black History Month provides opportunities to gain a deeper understanding of African American history, acknowledging the centuries of struggles for equality and freedom, and whereas Morrisville is particularly fortunate to have a rich, diverse culture, the Shiloh community was established in 1867, just 15 short years after Morrisville was chartered. Prior to the Civil War, 1861 to 65, Shiloh was home to free African Americans. During the month of February, the town has emphasized the importance and impact of Black history in Morrisville through the lens of the Shiloh community by highlighting historical markers and greenway signage through social media and other resources. And whereas we are immensely proud of our history and diversity and will continue taking on the challenges to advance reforms and break down barriers, recognizing that despite progress, racial prejudice still exists in America. Now, therefore, the Town Council of the Town of Morrisville does hereby recognize February 2026 as Black History Month and encourages all residents to celebrate our diverse heritage and culture and continue our efforts to create a world that is more just, peaceful, and prosperous for all. I believe there's an Earl Smith in the audience to receive this.
Well, I just want to, first of all, good evening. And I'd like to say, on behalf of the Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church, where our pastor is the Reverend David L. Jones, I just want to say thank you on behalf of the entire congregation. Sunday morning at 11 o'clock, I will be presenting this to the entire church. Thank you.
Thank you, Earl. Next on the agenda is Morrisville Speaks, public comment. Do we have people signed up? Okay, no one is signed up at this time. If someone would like to go ahead and address the audience, please go ahead and state your name and your residential address, and then afterwards, please go ahead and fill out the sheet for us after you're done. You will have 3 minutes.
Good evening, council members. My name is Stephanie Reed, aka Sea Shanty Steph, and I live at 1672 Legendary Lane. I stand before you at every meeting to speak on the topic most dear to my heart, homelessness. This issue is more urgent than ever. Just this past Tuesday, the Raleigh City Council and Wake County Commissioners held a historic joint meeting, their first in 2 decades, to tackle our housing crisis. As Raleigh Housing Director Amelia Sutton noted, there's a direct, unbreakable tie between the price of a roof and the number of people living without one. There's a common misconception that the housing crisis is a mystery or the fault of a few institutional investors. But as Laura Foote of UMB Action points out, corporate landlords are a response to the crisis, not the cause. They are betting on the fact that we won't build enough homes to meet demand. We're currently facing a massive shortage. The NC Chamber Foundation projects Wake County will be short over 110,000 homes by 2029. This isn't a partisan issue, it's a math issue. That's why we see leaders like Republican Chuck Edwards and Democrat Wiley Nickel joining the bipartisan federal congressional YIMBY caucus. We simply must build more. The human cost of this shortage is staggering. Our January 2025 point-in-time count found 1,258 neighbors experiencing homelessness, a 27% increase in just 1 year. And the number of unsheltered residents has more than doubled. And most distressingly, while Black residents make up 20% of Wake County, they represent 63% of our homeless population. We often blame homelessness on drugs, mental illness, or poverty, but the data tells a different story. West Virginia has high overdose rates, but low homelessness. Alabama has high rates of mental illness, but low homelessness. The strongest correlation to homelessness isn't personal failure, it's rent. As a city becomes more affluent and housing costs rise, homelessness follows. In fact, A 10% increase in rent in a major city leads to an 8% jump in homelessness. To put it simply, homelessness is a symptom of affluence, not just poverty. There is hope on the horizon. On March 9th, the Board of Commissioners will discuss a new city-county initiative to end homelessness. Finally, I have a major announcement. Raleigh was just selected by YIMBY Action to host the National YIMBY Conference this November, beating out San Francisco. Yes. This puts our region at the center of the national conversation on housing. I hope to see you there, learning how we can make Morrisville a leader in housing abundance. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a sheet that you can fill out? You got it from the past. Okay. Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to avail themselves of the opportunity to address this body for up to 3 minutes? Yes, sir. Please go ahead and your name, your residential address, and then please see the clerk to codify that. Thank you, sir.
My name is Naveen Mupidi. I'm a business owner in the town of Morrisville. I have a concern for a public safety and a business improvement for the junction where the Super Walmart is there. So there is a divider between two commercial properties, which is Walmart, divides the Walmart and the other complex, which is right across the Walmart. And that divider is posing a public safety issue there, where some cars, I see at least one car a day crossing the divider, jumping over the divider to go on to the 54 Miami Boulevard, or go to the Walmart. So that is another one, is the public safety. And the other thing is that the customers from the Walmart having an inconvenience coming to the other side of business area because of that divider. They don't know how to cross the roundabout or take a U-turn from the Miami Boulevard. So I would like to request that if that divider is removed, there is a feasibility to do that and put keep four stop signs there so that cars can stop and look over and cross over the other business area as well. It creates a public safety for the commuters as well. So that's all I have for now.
Okay. Thank you very much for your help.
Yeah.
I would also say that as a reminder, we encourage the submission of written comments as they offer a valuable way for community members to share their feedback. To submit written comments, please email publicinput@morrisvillenc.gov. Even the speakers who spoke with us tonight, sending us emails with more details is also helpful, if you wish.
Okay. Do I
Thank you, sir.
leave an email there, or how's it?
Feel free to email us if you wish, but if you could go ahead and just fill out that form, which will be your name and your residential address, we'd appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. Okay. At this time, we have 2 administrative reports this evening. These reports are for information only unless there are specific questions. Does any member of council have a question on either of these reports, the Community Innovation Group Quarterly Update and the Comprehensive Transportation Plan Update? Okay. Not seeing any questions on either of those. So we have 4 presentations tonight, but we're moving the action item up in front of that. So we have 1 action item tonight. We now invite Brett Martin, Transportation Project Manager, to the podium.
So intuitive, and I didn't get it. All right, let me pull this out here. All right, thank you, Mayor Colley and members of the council. Just bringing this back to you after we talked pretty extensively about this at the town council retreat back in January, for you to accept the alternative transit study and give us kind of a nod on the direction we should go for service improvements that follow up from that study. So this item will be short in terms of what I have to offer today, but just to cover the agenda of what I'm going to cover, we will provide a recap of the feasibility factors that I covered at the retreat that impacts our service concept development, as well as kind of where the study looked to determine what type of service improvements we should make. I will go again through the near-term study recommendations, I'll summarize the updates that we made to the final report for the study following up from the council retreat, recap our recommended next steps and the budget that would be necessary to support those next steps, follow up on council feedback that we received at the retreat and some of the questions that were posed, and then get to the council action and decision points for tonight. So just to kind of reiterate what we spoke a lot about at the retreat, the feasibility factors impacting service concept development, as well as kind of the constraints of where we could really look to make any type of transit service improvements with the study. And you see that there's a number of different factors, but kind of the broad factors here are, okay, we have the community funding area program and the support that it's able to provide or not able to provide, and kind of what some of the guardrails are with that program related to financial tolerance, the timeline for getting support, service design standards, so forth. Of course, we also looked at the regulatory compliance considerations that we previously covered. What does the Americans with Disabilities Act entail for our public transportation service concepts that we can look at in terms of cost, in terms of how much effort might need to go into it, in terms of our service area that we may need to provide, things like that, as well as Title VI, and making sure that we're approaching things on a performance-based, in a performance-based fashion, so that we're not discriminating against persons based on race, color, or national origin. Town budget considerations, how much can the town afford? What are we getting for our money in terms of productivity? And then also just the general planning justification for the concepts. You know, we need to think about things like the density of access that we're providing throughout the community for people to take advantage of the system, geographic coverage, the reliability of service, the directness of travel. Once people get on, they want to get moving right in the direction that they desire to go, frequency, wait times, all that. So all of these factors came together for us to, and kind of constrain where we were looking for development of service concepts. And of course, we landed with this as the alternative. This is the study and the staff recommended service improvement alternative. To increase the number of vehicles providing service, to improve ride booking availability and passenger wait times. And again, to review, our baseline service is one vehicle, generally in the morning from 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then we have two vehicles generally from 1 to 7 p.m. And then for the last 2 hours of the day, we have just one vehicle again. So this recommendation would, at full build out, would do two vehicles during all service area hours, during all of the time that the Smart Shuttle is running. And then it would have a third vehicle come in during peak, during weekdays. So that's what is meant by the increasing number of vehicles and the capacity associated with that. And then also this recommends the addition of nodes to expand passenger access to more pickup and drop-off locations, up to 9 additional. We could actually go higher than that, but of course you still want to make sure that you're constrained to an extent so that you're not providing too much premium access, so that it's not putting too much strain and demand on the service capacity. And ultimately, the access that would be improved would increase our current effective service area, if you just measure that as a 1/4 mile buffer around each node, from about 3.5 square miles to 4.9 square miles. And you see the cost there for the operating expenses associated with what the full build out would be, and the capital costs for the node construction. And just to go into a little bit more on the nodes, of course, the nodes selected that were laid out in the study as recommendations came from a number of different sources, community input, also providing a little bit better employment access, particularly to those locations throughout the town where you have a high concentration of service sector jobs, and probably a higher likelihood of transit-dependent populations needing to get to those jobs. Also placement around, strategic placement, kind of more in the center of town, near where we are now at Town Hall. Other employment locations or shopping locations where people really want to go to run errands or to take shopping trips. So Wegmans, Food Lion on Davis Drive, and then other trip generators like multifamily residential, that sort of thing. I will say, and I note this later in the presentation, I've, of course, received the feedback from the town council on densifying nodes in some of our really large residential areas. And so that would be something that we would put in the hopper when we talk about our node improvement program. That would be a follow-up effort from acceptance of the results of this study. But I'll get into that in just a moment. So you see the potential additional node locations. I won't go through each of those individually. So following up, you remember from the town council's retreat in January, there were a lot of things that I covered that we didn't really cover in presentations that we made to the town council coming with this report in your regular meetings. And because there's a lot to get into and there's a lot just kind of behind the scenes that's kind of constraining where we could go, certain feasibility factors. And I mentioned that we probably need to get that in the report so that we're telling the full story of the why. Why? What was guiding us and why did we land where we landed? And so you will see in the report there were updates made. There was a whole new section 3 that discusses the programmatic and regulatory factors influencing public transportation planning in Morrisville, and these include the ADA, the Title VI and their impacts, the community funding area program requirements, as well as feasible timelines for implementation of different service models, right? We mentioned fixed route. It would, if we were to implement fixed route, it would take a lot more time because there's a whole lot more involved in getting that off the ground. There's also a new Appendix F that lays out the 13 fixed route concepts that were screened out for further feasibility evaluation through the study process, including the new ones that I shared with the council at the retreat that would directly serve Kitts Creek and Breckenridge. There's also a new Appendix G that lays out more information on what the Americans with Disabilities Act requirements entail for transit service in Morrisville. And there's a new Appendix H that lays out the thresholds and a proposed rubric for the transit market in Morrisville to be ready for fixed route service, because there was a desire, a pretty good question asked, well, what would it take to get there? And so we developed that rubric. It's not an exact science. I want to make sure that I mention that. But it is a science. It's a science, but not an exact science. So what you see in that rubric is not exactly 100%, oh, we have to absolutely stick to that. But those are the indicators that we would want to monitor over time to see where we're at in terms of that readiness and suitability. The recap of recommended next steps for service improvement implementation. Again, just to recap, enhance the Morrisville Smart Shuttle by adding up to 9 new microtransit nodes in underserved areas, increasing our vehicle fleet size to reduce wait times and improve reliability, and transitioning to minivans. So our key next steps are really, this came up, of course, as well. It's a great question. What does our ridership look like? We don't really have a great handle on that, and we need to. We need to understand who they are, where they're going, why, what their trip purposes are, all that kind of stuff. So we will begin surveying demographics of our Smart Shuttle users to better understand the existing market. We will conduct a demand analysis and develop a node improvement program to identify priority node locations and amenities. That's something that we will be developing following up from acceptance of this study and will bring back to you for your approval. That is the mechanism that will prioritize how we invest in nodes and the amenities that we put in nodes. And that's one of those things that I mentioned is pretty much required by Title VI, if we're going to be compliant with Title VI. Secure community funding area program support, coordinate the changes with our existing operator, which is GoCarry, to reflect those changes in service enhancements, to explore creation of advanced booking option to improve reliability, especially for seniors, but balance, we understand we need to balance those interests with those expecting that real-time on-demand option and not jeopardize that aspect of the service too much to where we get back to a place of it being poor reliability, right? And then also hire a dedicated transit planner to support all that goes into this. So again, the recommended timeline for next steps, following up from your council retreat back in January, we're at the meeting today where you would consider acceptance of the final report and take action directing staff to pursue next steps for the short-term improvements, including the fiscal year 27 town budget needs. We need to get, if we're going to do something in FY27 on probably the earliest available timeline that can be available to us, we need to be able to make an application for the community funding area program by March 6th. And then, of course, we'll be monitoring, well, how is our application doing? Are we looking like we're going to get funded? And then we will coordinate service changes with GoCarry to set us up for the improvements to be implemented, at least on the service side, in October and November. Okay. One thing I do want to mention again, there's always this kind of question between service enhancement and nodes and how are they related. The structural drivers of the timeline, again, for node expansion are independent of those for service improvements. However, the implementation of additional nodes should not occur before service capacity is expanded. So I want to make sure, because if you do that, then you're just making the reliability worse before you've improved the service. Again, a fixed route service concept cannot be implemented until spring of 2029 at the earliest and is limited by funding program guidelines, federal compliance considerations, and other constraints. And some additional notes on the microtransit and service improvements timeline. Implementation of service improvements is recommended, again, to be piecemeal. First, implement 2 vehicles during all service hours, and then later that third vehicle during that peak period, Monday through Friday. And the reason, again, that I want to express why that's recommended is because you don't want to overdo it when you don't have to. You don't want to overdo it in terms of how much money you're spending and how much you're throwing out on the street. Because if you do overdo it, then the public will get used to that and expect that in perpetuity, right? So there's certain targets we want to hit, right, for reliability, wait times, that sort of thing. And we want to see if we can get to that, or at least get pretty close to that, with just moving that dial one tick at a time. This includes transition to minivans to better fit seating capacity with actual shared ride demand, and exploring those advanced booking options for targeted populations, meaning seniors and persons with disabilities. Implementation of the additional node locations is also recommended to be piecemeal, 4 to 5 nodes during fiscal year 27, and potentially all of the remaining nodes by the end of fiscal year 28. And then, of course, I want to stress what you see in the final report is not the end-all be-all of the node locations. We want to include consideration of additional node locations that may go beyond that. So what I've heard, following up from our retreat and prior input that we received, Wake Med, Morrisville Medical Park, and also improving the node density in those expansive residential areas that we have, Kitts Creek, Breckenridge, Providence Place. All right, so just getting into the budget numbers, again, to look at those. These are planning level operating costs to the town for the existing Smart Shuttle this fiscal year versus future years, based on a change in revenue that we have happening on both the community funding area program side and what it's contributing and what it's assumed to be contributing in the future, as well as funding that we would be getting from GoCarry as a credit for Federal Transit Administration formula funds. So this fiscal year, our general overall budget for operation of the Smart Shuttle is $978,220. And that's what you see in the column in the middle. And our CFAP contribution is 50%. So it's half of that. And right now, this fiscal year, we're projecting around $48,000 from that credit of FTA funds. But if we were just to keep everything the same into next year, but in FY26 dollars, that last column is what this would look like. We would get a higher contribution from the community funding area program, remember, so it goes up to 65%. We get a little bit more, actually it's quite a bit more, from the credit for FTA formula funds, and that really reduces what the town's contribution would otherwise be. So what is happening here is, if you take what you're contributing now and you do the math, you can see there's a lot of capacity to do more in terms of service, just in the difference between what you're contributing now and what you would otherwise be projected to contribute next fiscal year. So laying out the implementation of the improvements that I presented, this is partial year, fiscal year 2027, and this is in FY27 dollars, with 2 full-time vehicles in November and the additional peak vehicle in April. So this is what the financial math would look like. the CFAP contribution, the credit of FTA formula funds, and then what the overall operating cost is calculated to be. And so that would result in a town contribution from the general operating fund of $355,068. Okay, that's if you do the piecemeal that I mentioned the study recommends and that staff recommends. Sorry, all right. I went too far, sorry. Okay. And then if you do the partial year 2027 with 2 full-time vehicles and the additional peak vehicle in November, all at the same time to be implemented right up front, this is what the math would look like on a partial year basis, 386,405. And then if you were to do full year implementation, and this is assumed, okay, well, we wouldn't be able to do full year implementation until fiscal year 28 because, right, that would be the first full year that everything would be in place. But this is still an FY '27 dollars. This is what the math would look like on a full year basis with all of that in place. Now, I do want to mention, this assumes the maximum amount that may be leveraged from the community funding area program under Wake Transit. That is not a guarantee. It is a discretionary and competitive program. And it could be, there's a lot of different knobs that can be turned and levers that can be pulled in terms of how we interact with that program for financial assistance. So it's hard for me to share based on where that lands, every scenario that could possibly be out there. But we certainly want, if there's any big changes, significant changes, want to be able to come back to you and share that with you. All right, so there was a very appreciated town council feedback and questions at the retreat, and we wanted to follow up on. There was a question asked about minivan seating capacity. It's 5 to 6 passengers at a time. There was also a question about whether or not we can accommodate bicycles, and that answer to that is yes. They would have a rear-mounted rack, and there's a couple of options that we can choose from. But yes, to answer the question, we can support bicycles on those. We're also currently working to launch our recurring survey program to collect that demographic data that I mentioned and other types of information from current users of the service. We began also, by the way, discussions with the town of Cary and Go Cary on a potential intermunicipal fixed route service concept and advocacy for that within the Wake Transit program. Because the town, that came up at the retreat, and the town of Cary actually also has an interest in pursuing that as well. And we know that the western Morrisville and West Cary markets are really very well intertwined. And so it's something that makes sense for both of us to look at. So we'll continue that effort, and we'll keep you updated on that as we work on that. With marketing and promotion work to be done for the service improvements, we also want to do as much as we can to promote connections we will have to Go Cary and Go Triangle services, as well as travel options available to residents through Go Wake Access, because I feel like there's a lot that's out there that just may not be realized, and there's not much of an awareness. So we want to do more of that and allow residents to understand the full package of transit options that they may have available to them. And then we will also explore other potential service vendors and what they can offer compared to our current arrangement with Go Cary. But I do want to say that that is not necessarily a priority amid all of these other things that we need to get done, but it is something that we want to look at so that the town council is well aware of like what their options may be moving forward, what the cost is, what they're getting for that cost, and so forth. All right, so where we're at here is the town council action decision points. So of course, the first point here is to accept the results of the alternative transit service study by resolution. The study and resolution were included in your packets, and to confirm the following for near-term improvements. And one thing, there is a change based on information I learned today that I'll mention in just a moment related to the phasing of the vehicles. But the way we are recommending it is actually all we may be able to do based on what the community funding area program can support. So we wanted the recommendation of doing 2 vehicles to start operation in November, and then a 3rd vehicle to start later, as early as April of 2027 is pretty much all the community funding area program will support. We got that answer today. So even though I have it noted on here as a remaining question for council, it is a remaining question for you if you want to do it, if you want to do it all at once. If there's still a desire to do that, it's just the community funding area program may not pay for that third vehicle between November and April. So just wanted to make sure that we're clear on that in terms of what we're able to do. So anyway, 2 vehicles during all service hours by fall of 2026, the additional third vehicle during daily peak times on weekdays in the spring or fall of 2027. We would certainly try, based on the data that we get, if there's a need that points to that third vehicle, we would try to get it in the spring of 2027. Again, I had the option of you could do it with the base service improvement in the fall, but that the community funding area program will not pay for that if we do all of it in the fall. Convert the vehicle fleet to the Smart Shuttle branded minivans with service improvements in the fall of 2026. As I mentioned earlier, you will consider approval of our node improvement program this summer or early fall. We will bring that back to you. That will be the prioritization of where we locate nodes and what we put at the nodes. And then the construction of the remaining construction of the first tranche of nodes by the fall of 2027, and then the remaining recommended nodes by the fall of 2028. And then we want to explore feasibility and requirements to offer the advanced booking options. And we want to do that work and also kind of bring that back at the same time, probably around the same time we would do the nodes, the node improvement program. And then, the budget numbers you've seen on slides 11 through 13, we just want to make sure that, with your decision, you understand where that puts us financially in terms of what the town would need to contribute, assuming what the community funding area can support if we were to leverage it at maximum capacity. And then also, I know we do not want to foreclose on the idea of fixed route in the town of Morrisville. So for potential long-term implementation of fixed route service, continue to monitor and evaluate the market for that using those thresholds or that rubric that you see in Appendix H of the study as a guide that would direct us in that. If when market conditions point to fixed route service as suitable, we would re-engage the town council on concepts to consider for potential implementation. And as I mentioned earlier, we have already started the dialogue with the town of Cary, but to continue to work with them and the Wake Transit Program administrators to consider an intermunicipal fixed route service supporting the Western Cary and Western Morrisville markets. And that's all I have. I'd be happy to take any questions if there are any.
There are. I'd like to recognize Councilmember Patel, followed by Mayor Pro Tem Rabati.
If you go back to page 4, actually, I'm sorry, that'll be page 6. You already answered the question about page 4. You mentioned the Kids Creek and Breckenridge, but I believe we had also mentioned Providence Place as another neighborhood to consider.
Yes, the idea is for the very large residential areas that, if you're having just one node, for everybody in that area to get to, and that one node could be very far from the edges of the neighborhood, to consider an additional node in those neighborhoods. So it would include Kids Creek, Breckenridge, Providence Place.
It would, okay. All right. And as far as considering alternative provider to go Cary, you mentioned that that's not immediate priority. So when are we looking to review that?
It's a good question. We can get an idea. I mean, we have an idea of where things might land cost-wise per hour. The question is, what builds into that? Like, what are we getting for the cost per hour? And splicing all of that out compared to what we're getting now. And so, that's something that we can do on, we can continue to explore on an ongoing basis and get more information and share it as we get it. My take is coming away from the retreat that it did not seem like that was a huge priority of the council. If it is, we can make it a priority. But it just didn't, the feedback that I gathered was that it was just not something that would rise to the highest tier of areas where we would focus, particularly over the next year, just because there's all this other stuff that two people in the planning department have to do to get this done.
On one of the slides, you have the numbers, what the average cost is versus what Go Carry.
So the numbers are,
Right.
yeah.
85 versus 121.
Yeah, so with Go Carry, our FY, so remember, these numbers were developed during FY '26, over the course of calendar year 2025. So what Carry is going to charge us, what they're telling us they're going to charge us is $125 per hour in fiscal year 2027. And the market rate for minivan operated microtransit service is really kind of running around 85. It might be a little higher because every year things go up a little bit, right? But what the study did not take a deep dive into is what do you get for that?
Right. And I thought
How
that's
do
what
you
we were
compare?
going to research.
Right, we just need to dig into that more,
Right.
so.
Right. That's the only question I had.
Mayor Pro Tem Labate, please.
Thank you very much. I found all the additional information very helpful. Could we go to slide 8, please? Yes. Okay, so I have a question about this slide because it seems to me that the community funding area program application is due in 10 days. So do we have enough time to complete that application? How complex is the application process?
It's not, for the type of application that we're making, because it would be worked into the work plan development cycle rather than having to go back through the whole process again. It's relatively easy to do.
Okay, so there's no risk of not getting that application in on time?
Right, no.
Okay, glad to hear it. Could we go to slide 12 and 13, please? Okay, yeah, let's take this one as represented. My understanding was that CFAP could only fund 50% of the operating costs of the service. Is that not correct?
Not anymore. I mean, so yeah, beginning in fiscal year 2027, it's 65%.
Oh, that's exciting. Okay, so then that was my question. I wanted to know how you calculated 50% because I couldn't make sense of it. But if it is 65, then great. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Councilmember Keston, please.
I'm appreciative of all the work that's been done on this so far and the additional work that you've done to get it to this point. You were mentioning what you had learned today, and that it was basically it sounded like a probability that we wouldn't get funding if we wait. Could you explain that again?
Yeah, sorry if that came out kind of jimbled. So what I'm saying is the community funding area program cannot support if we wanted to go all the way up to 3 vehicles in November. It cannot support that. It can support, we wouldn't even be able, we couldn't even apply for it, is basically what I'm saying. What we had to get down to is in the community funding area program management plan, there's gray area, and we had to get down to, okay, this is how I interpret it, this is how Campo interprets it, where are we gonna meet on this in terms of, so it really, that's what a lot of that exercise was, but we wouldn't be able to do 3 vehicles and have the community funding area program support 65% of the cost of that beginning in November. Well, what it can support is 2 vehicles, going to the full-time 2 vehicles for all service hours in November, and then coming back to request that 3rd vehicle in April at the earliest. And the reason for that is because there's a rule that says it's a 50% of budget. You can't make a budget modification if you're going over 50% without having to go all the way back through the community funding area program application process, which only happens once a year. And we wouldn't be able, so the next available opportunity to get anything funded that requires that would be July of 2027. And we don't want to wait that long, right? So there's that 50% rule. And the way they measure it is not based on, what we're asking for in fiscal year 2027 is not hitting that 50%. But if you annualize it, we're not hitting that 50% because we're partial yearing it. But if you annualizing it, it is hitting that 50%. And they would have to base that on the annualized amount. Because the program, if they make the decision to do that, the program ultimately would be taking on more than 50% on a recurring basis as an obligation. Another point is, like I have recommended in the past, they want to turn the tick, one tick at a time. What says we absolutely need to throw that amount of money at 3 vehicles all at once? If we do 2 vehicles and we get data that we can monitor that tell us how we're performing and if what improvements we have to improve performance, and if we're hitting certain targets that we want to get to or not, we can bring that back, right? And ask, and that will be good justification to get that 3rd vehicle.
So if I understand it correctly, we're essentially operating under the assumption that if we don't decide on this soon, that we would lose out on that funding that we got an extension on that funding. We would lose out on the extension of that funding. That's not the case anymore. Our decision is not necessarily tied to that. So we could wait, or we could make the decision to add the extra vehicle sooner without there's really no time pressure on that.
Right. I'm trying to make it clear that your decision, if your decision is going to be swayed by what the community funding area program can support versus not support, I want you to understand this point. But you can make a decision to do something without their support, right?
Mm-hmm. I'm really excited about the intermunicipal fixed route service concept. I'm very excited to hear that. Personally, I would love to see a branding update to go Morrisville to signal alignment with regional cooperation, but I know that would be an added cost, not in the scope of this thing. With the Appendix H, I'm very appreciative of that being included. Does it make sense to think of that if we were to bring that back with development cases? Think of that as a transit impact analysis.
Yes, in fact, I don't know how deeply you want to get into it, but the way you'll see that there's really 4 criteria in there. There's the population density criteria, there's the commuting population criteria, there's the non-commuting trips criterion, and then there's the connectivity criterion. So for the commuter trips and the non-commuter trips, there's a whole range of data sources that we could tap into and look at for how is that evolving or changing or pushing the needle in that direction. And one of them would be development, right? If we have a big development come in, let's say in our TOD area, that's probably going to move the needle on some of that. And so we would factor that into the amount that the critical mass that we would need to get to, that the rubric lays out as what we would need to cross or hit to be, for that factor to be suitable.
Yeah. If some sort of analysis on that whenever we do have development that we are deciding on, basically, kind of as a decision tool for is this helping or hurting specifically our traffic congestion, right? Is this getting us closer to reducing car dependency, or is it just making things worse? I'd love to have that data to be able to help with decision making.
I will say though, with TIA kind of stuff like that, to get at that level of specificity would probably require an ordinance amendment to require it, right? Like we do other stuff like for a transportation impact analysis, but it's something I can look into.
Appreciate it. That's all my questions. Thank you.
So I'm interested in going ahead and accepting this tonight. I'm okay with waiting until April for the third thing. I think it'd be good to do it, but I'd rather leverage our dollar just to the maximum amount possible. And to that end, I would be interested in sooner rather than later looking at the difference between the carry and an alternative provider, $40 an hour. If you could do at least a light look to make sure that it's apples to apples. If it's apples to apples, I'd be interested in looking at maybe implementing that sooner rather than later, because with that savings, we might be able to do more without any loss of service, which is the main thing. We're trying to improve the service. This might give us some more resources. So those are my thoughts about that. I don't see anyone else who's looking to weigh in at this time. Can we put up on the screen the resolution? Okay, so this would be as amended, what's been presented. So I'd entertain a motion to adopt, to adopt this, if someone's willing to make that motion.
I'll make that motion. I make a motion to adopt Resolution 2025-389-0, accepting the results of the Transit Alternatives Evaluation Final Report.
Second.
I have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Rabati, a second from Councilmember Kessling. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that carries unanimously 6-0. So you have an accepted plan. Thank you very much for all the effort. I know we went a little bit deeper than you at first expected, but that's how we roll. So we really appreciate you guys taking the time. Staff did a lot of extra work on our behalf, but I think it was really beneficial for all of us. Is there anything else you need from us at this time?
No, I think we're good. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We will now circle back to item 11A. We have 4 presentations tonight. We now invite Town Manager Zudema to the podium.
Excuse me. Good evening, Mayor, members of Council. Thank you for some time tonight. Always enjoy this opportunity to introduce you to new staff, especially those at the department head level that are joining our leadership team. So as you know, we have been looking for our next Public Works Director since last fall. We did a full search on that, had a number of qualified candidates, and then with the assistance of our HR department, we went through a modified assessment center process where we received a written submission. There was also an in-person assessment center exercise along with an interview. I say an interview, really a discussion. We chatted, John and I with Matt and the other candidates. Excuse me. When this was all done, there was unanimous support from all 3 components of that process that this gentleman was by far the best prepared candidate, and then I think particularly from John and I, the best fit. And that's really important. We've talked about that before. It's great to have a skill set. He has the skill set, but it's even more important to be a fit in the team and in the community. And Matt really fills both of those roles. So let me introduce you to our new Public Works Director, Matt Weatherall. Matt has 15 years of local government experience, including the last 2.5 years in the town of Apex, where he worked as a facilities and grounds manager. He also has experience in facilities management, capital project management, public works operations, and a lot of that was with the town of Cary prior to joining Apex. He is also an officer in the Army National Guard. We appreciate your service. Thank you. And again, he holds a Bachelor of Science in Political Science from Central Michigan University and an MPA from NC State. Has a number of other certifications through FEMA and other incident management programs. Considers himself a people-centered leader. That came out clearly in our conversation with him and in his exercises. And he's committed to strengthening public service delivery, building strong teams, and continuously improving outcomes for residents. So I'd like to introduce you to Matt Weatherall and let him offer a few comments.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Matt Weatherall. I'm thrilled to be the Public Works Director here. So I've been on the job for a little over a week at this point. I've got a good chance to meet a lot of the team here. And as you're aware, it's a really, really well-run organization, really strong team. So I'm excited to be joining the team and building upon those successes. So I'm looking forward to supporting Public Works staff and ensuring that our operations remain effective, sustainable, and safe as we move forward. So look forward to working with you and serving the community.
Excellent. Welcome very much. A lot of us love the word sustainable. So thank you for leaning in on that. Welcome. Thank you. And we will now invite John Letney, Assistant Town Manager, and Aaron Hudson, Communications and Outreach Director, to the podium.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor and Council. We appreciate the opportunity to bring back to you the sponsorship policy update, and I will go through a little of the history of how we got to where we are, and then turn it over to Aaron to talk about the draft guideline that we put together and kind of how that came to be. So you'll recall just about 2 years ago now, March of 24, we came to you with a sponsorship of town projects and services policy and a facilities naming right policy, two separate policies for two separate yet related topics. We presented that to the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Advisory Committee and got their input, made some tweaks, and made some changes based on your input. Brought it back to you in May of that year, in which you approved by resolution those two separate policies. From that point, we moved forward into doing some research around a consultant that could help us implement the sponsorship and naming right part of the overall policies and put the RFP together, got that out, and had a December due date at the end of that year. Early 2025 was really looking over those policy or those proposal reviews, contract negotiations, and then we selected, as you know, the Superlative Group as our contractor. In April, you approved the contract execution with Superlative Group for a phased professional services agreement. Their proposal came with 3 phases. You approved phase 1, which is the valuation phase of that, where we then spent the next several months working with staff and their team here in Morrisville to look at all of our assets, our amenities, the opportunities we had for sponsorship and for naming rights. They came back to us with a draft policy, which we accepted, or a draft valuation, I'm sorry, and then brought that back to council in October in a couple of different meetings. So the presentation was on phase 1 assessment, and the Superlative Group representatives were here with us. And what that included was the asset inventory and their initial findings about the valuation. We went into a closed session to discuss the valuation report with the specific numbers related to naming rights and sponsorship, because that is a confidential proprietary document and report. From that point, we went into an open work session, talked about the benefits, the cost, and received consensus approval from you to proceed with phase 2 and 3. However, prior to that, you were interested in an updated sponsorship and facility naming rights policy, which we now have as a guideline to present to you this evening. There were some very specific things that came out of that work session that you were interested in making sure that were incorporated into a policy. Things such as approval, who approves, how it's approved, how do we separate what the superlative group would do for us based on contract versus what we would do ourselves with maybe smaller local businesses that weren't really in a focus on naming rights. They just wanted to sponsor a particular event. So you'll see that we have all of that in the guideline for you tonight. So with the consensus to move forward into phase 2 and 3, pending again this updated review of the guideline, we want to bring that to you tonight, and then we have some discussion points for you at the end of that. So with that, let me turn it over to our Communications and Outreach Director, Erin Hudson.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Mayor and council members, for a few minutes here with you this evening. So for clarity, wanted to provide a quick recap of what phases 2 and 3 of the Superlative Group Professional Services Agreement really entails. So phase 2 would begin with strategy, whereby Superlative would prospect and solicit any sponsorship and naming rights partners for the town. Then they would offer their ongoing support for development of those agreements with those partners before presenting those to the town. They would also commit to providing regular progress reports following any meeting opportunities and any monthly progress updates as well. Phase 3 could really be seen as more of the logistics management process, elements such as contract and agreement tracking, contract auditing to ensure obligations of those partners are being met, finalizing agreement terms, development of payment schedules, continued progress reports, just to highlight a few. So moving on to the town's existing internal policies. Assistant Town Manager Letney shared that the Town Council approved both a sponsorship of town projects and a services and facility naming rights policy in May of 2024. While policy is designed to provide internal guidance, separately, staff also had developed a forward-facing sponsorship guide that was giving us the opportunity to provide that guidance to the public. Staff really did have an opportunity to sort of put those policies into practice and began to recognize some challenges within those two separate policies, individually and collectively. Some parts of those were overly prescriptive or maybe even lacked necessary guidance along the steps. In moving forward with agreement with the Superlative Group, we were also noticing some duplicate or conflicting details therein, generally just creating a little bit more confusion than clarity. So staff also had determined that the sponsorship guide needed some additional clarity at varying sponsorship guide or threshold levels. And we really wanted to be able to incorporate athletic sponsorship opportunities that had previously been identified by our Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources staff. So what we have prepared and proposed for you this evening is a consolidated guiding document, and we really hope that it is providing clarity and eliminating some of those previously defined points of confusion. We've captured elements that were previously included in both of these separate policies. Those have been incorporated and expanded to adequately reflect the town's interests and values, specifically the definitions and the guiding principles. We've provided clarity that internal staff would review and approve lower level sponsorships that do not rise to the level of valuation threshold in our agreement with Superlative. This can really be seen as those items such as benches, bike racks, some of those smaller elements. You'll also see this further clarified in what we are referencing as the addendum within this document, which outlines those broadened sponsorship level thresholds that we'll talk a little bit more about. We've also provided clarity that Town Council approval would be needed for any proposals valued at $60,000 or greater. Your original packet and the item here in front of you indicates $50,000, but it should state $60,000, and that aligns with our discussion question here in a couple of slides. On the previous slide, I mentioned the sponsorship guide, and we have provided clarity for that document within the addendum. We've added specific athletics opportunities, again, that were previously identified by the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources staff. As Assistant Town Manager Letney indicated, We heard in your feedback from prior conversations that there really needed to be opportunity for everyone at every level here in Morrisville to be able to participate. So we've adjusted the lowest sponsor level minimum contribution threshold to $250. Ooh, slip of the tongue. Allowing that broad range of community participation. Staff did some research, and this is comparable and competitive with other community agencies as well. Maintaining these sponsorship levels and thresholds in that separate addendum document also provides us flexibility. So if we have a need to make additional changes in the future, we don't have to go through a full policy or guideline update. So we will also pull up that addendum here in just a moment as well so that you can see what that looks like. So based on the recap of information, the history that John was able to provide you as well, we do have a couple of affirming discussion questions that we'd like to walk through with you. So discussion point number 1 is, does council want to review and or approve all naming and presenting rights proposals irrespective of valuation, or review and approve based on valuation? So essentially what we would propose is staff can review and approve any proposals valued at $59,999 or less, and council would review and approve any and all valued at $60,000 or more, or council could review and approve all. Currently within the policy, we would propose that staff would review and approve anything below that $60,000 valuation threshold. But that's our proposal. Certainly want to be able to have that discussion with council and understand your thoughts.
Would you like to hear from each of us on each of these points and then move on to the next one? Is that going to work best for you?
Yes, we'll go through each discussion point individually.
Okay, I'd like to recognize Mayor Pro Tem Rabati, followed by Councilmember Johnson.
So I would be a lot more comfortable, and this is no reflection on staff whatsoever, but I would be a lot more comfortable if we started a little slower on the council review threshold. I would really like to see us start at like council review over $25,000. And then, you know, we can revisit in 6 months depending on the volume. Like if there's thousands of requests to sponsor at $25,000, you know, then we can review. But I would be, $60,000 sounds like a ton of money to me. And I think that there's a lot of gray area between companies that will give, for example, $25,000 and $60,000. I just feel like there's a lot that can get lost in that mix. So that would be my preference, but you know, certainly willing to hear what the rest of the council thinks.
I have Councilmember Johnson next, but I'll ask a question. Is there a slide that sort of shows where the 60s are, where the 25 is, where's the 10? Do we have something like generally so we'll know like what kind of thing? Like Church Street Park, is that 25? Is that 60?
So those valuation items are contained in that confidential valuation report, so we're not able to talk specifics.
Okay, understood. Okay, I'd like to recognize Councilmember Johnson, followed by Councilmember Caramella.
So I'm going to ask that question a different way than Erin. Of all the naming and presenting rights proposals that we can potentially have, do we know how many there are?
So since we have not entered into phase 2 and 3 with superlative yet, we do not have any at this time.
No, I know we don't have any.
Okay.
Potentially. I guess what I'm trying to get at, because let me back up. I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Rabati. I think we need to kind of tiptoe lightly here. I think once, because this is so new to all of us, and so I might be one to just say, bring us everything. But I don't know how many potential proposals those are. Do we have an idea of how many potential naming right proposals there could be?
Town Manager Zidwell, would you like to speak to that?
So I think if you think back to what was discussed in the closed session, you start to think about what are your major facilities, and then there was also some description of some of those other facilities that might be sponsor a bowl. There's also the possibility of, new things being constructed or renovated or done that could also potentially be a sponsorship. I think to put it in reference, you're probably talking 20 or fewer, I think at least initially. So you're not talking about, 50 of these. I think I would be, and again, that's not 20 at once either.
Right.
We're going to ask them to focus on start here. And, whether that's the dog park because it's open and running, or if that's Church Street Park, and then they're going to move into like Town Center, so that's prepared to have sponsorship when it opens. And then we'll let them guide us, I think, Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, through what that process may look like. But yeah, this is not 100 of these that you're going to have to see every single meeting.
Yeah, thank you. That's really helpful, because I don't want to prolong this, because it has to come to council every time. But yet, I'm not, and maybe if I go back and look at the material we had, I'm not sure I want to pick an arbitrary number either. An arbitrary, oh my gosh. Arbitrary. Thank you. I am definitely not feeling well tonight. A dollar number. I don't, why would we pick 25 or 60 or 30 so I'm almost of the mindset we'll just, look at all of them, and then we can change our mind. If this becomes too cumbersome, bringing it to council all the time, then we can, council can always say, we're comfortable now, and you handle it. So I'm kind of at that mindset right now. Thank you.
Councilmember Garamella, followed by Councilmember Patel, please.
No, I agree with what Liz said, because right now, it's not the dollar amount. We don't know what is what value to it. Are we doing Church Street for $59,999? That it will not come to us. We don't have a number that is quantifying for which area. So unless we have some, rhythm to what we are really expecting, I think I would like to see all of them together.
Councilmember Patel, followed by Councilmember Kessling.
So one question I have, and you probably have that discussed during closed session, but Councilmember Kessling and I were not part of it, so I'll ask. How does the staff value the proposal? Is it something that is pre-decided?
So staff actually did not prepare the valuation. We used the third party, the Superlative Group, and they did a comprehensive valuation based on the information that they collected through their conversations with staff, through an asset valuation, through a site visit, and through their comparative quantitative and qualitative market analysis.
So the value is already established for each of the facilities that may be involved?
So they have a proposed valuation from that time, which was back in July. But I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think those valuations can probably adjust a little bit.
Yeah, so in that case, I'm in agreement with Councilmember Garimura and Councilmember Johnson that I would actually like council to review all of them, at least initially, and then we can decide how we want to go.
Thank you. Councilmember Kessling, followed by myself.
So as Councilmember Patel mentioned, we're not privy to the conversations that happened in closed session. To answer the question, I would be in favor of reviewing everything that comes before council. And I wanted to add some additional comments. It feels rather dystopian, and the movie Idiocracy comes to mind. In the movie, they water plants with Brawndo because that's what plants crave. And I know that's not what we're talking about here, but I'm worried that we risk degrading our civic identity just to make a quick buck, I suppose. And then I saw that we're banning political organizations, just the tangential comment. If we're doing that, I think it makes sense to ban companies that would engage in political lobbying as well. Certainly wouldn't want you know, if that's a you know, something that we're concerned about, I think that's an extension of that policy.
Okay. I appreciate that thought, but I would say that pretty much every corporation participates in lobbying, so I think that would be a little problematic, but I totally understand what you're saying. If we're going to do no political, it's hard to find that line. I'd be okay with a certain dollar amount, but I think that it sounds like we have consensus to look at everything for now. I think if we get a chance to share all that closed session stuff again, we might choose as a group to revisit this in a couple of weeks and say, actually, that's a level that we're comfortable with. So I think I'm in agreement in general with everybody right here that we want to see everything for now. Might be a little burdensome. Would that be in closed session or open?
So as that would come, I think we would have to consider that. I would talk with Lori or Frank, but I think we would bring that into closed session because that would be a negotiation. You know, again, that's I think to Councilmember Patel, to some of your question, you know, there's an estimated value of a sponsorship for each of our, let's just say the dog park, for example. And so what Superlative has done is estimated based on the work that they do in the market that you might expect to get this range of sponsorship for naming rights to the dog park. And then it would be a negotiation. They would go out, they would work with a company that they think, you know, might want to sponsor a dog park. They would come back and say they've offered this, and then we would bring that to you. You could say yes, you could say, you know, they could help you think maybe you could get more. That's where they're the important part of this, I think. But I do believe that that could be in closed session.
And then it would be at the following meeting that we maybe accept if we're okay with it.
I think that would be an appropriate process, yes.
Okay. I'd like to recognize, we've all had a chance, Mayor Pro Tem Rabati, followed by Councilmember Garamo.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I didn't pull the 20,000 number out of the air. What I was attempting to do there is to eliminate the necessity for council to weigh in on sponsorship of every tree, bush, and pathway in town, and restrict the actual, because I think that that's just going to make us a roadblock. So I think that it would be better if we develop some kind of threshold. We can always adjust up or down, but I think it would be better to have some kind of threshold, because I think if you really think about it, what we want is not to see every single sponsorship. You know, so that's just something that I would like everybody to consider. And also, to Councilmember Kessling's point, I would just like to say that I think it's really easy to laugh and say, oh, every company engages in lobbying, but the fact is that that is not true. And I think that, you know, I'm not saying that I necessarily agree with his point, but I do think that it deserves maybe a little bit more substantive consideration, considering the number of businesses just in Morrisville. You know, there are a lot of small businesses, but there are also a lot of larger ones. I don't pretend to be an expert on the lobbying posture of any of those companies, but I don't think that every single company has a personal lobbyist. And so I think that, you know, we have banned political organizations, and I think that's appropriate, but I don't think that we should so lightly dismiss the idea of companies that engage in direct corporate lobbying. Thank you.
If I might ask a question as well, Mayor Pro Tem, would council be comfortable if we also have that conversation, or at least consult with the town attorney just to better understand what it would entail for us to include that language?
I'm always in favor of running anything by the town attorney, but also, I mean, that's that's two of us that would be willing to entertain that conversation. As I said, I'm not necessarily 100% on board with the idea, but I would entertain the conversation of how that would be structured.
Agreed. Thank you.
Councilmember Garamella, please.
Yeah, regarding the companies, pretty much everyone has a PAC. Cisco has a PAC, AT&T has a PAC, GSK has a PAC. Pretty much every person has a PAC, but the purpose of that PAC is for a certain purpose, not for sponsorship or not town related. Like, AT&T has for broadband and other issues. GSK is for FDA and pharma industries. Cisco is for a different purpose. So I think just because they have a PAC doesn't necessarily mean this is only town business that you're doing. It has hardly any effect. But again, there's a lot of PACs all across. Every company has to have a lobby. That's pretty much, and so do we. You're hiring a lobbyist ourselves too. So with that said, my only concern is, I'm okay with the third one. I want to go back and question is, we don't know, at least in a framework, if like a dog park, like a sponsor, they want to sponsor as a naming right. What are we giving them versus they're giving us money? What are their criteria? I've not seen anything anywhere till now. So I would like to know that, because suppose someone ABC says they want to do the naming rights for the Church Street. What does that really mean for them? What does that mean for us? Everything will be different. Dog park will have different criteria. Everyone will have different criteria. But we're not privy to any of that right now to even do that analysis. So that's the reason my thought process is look at all basically case by case.
And that's a very valid question. And one of the points of specificity that we discussed removing from the policy was that those terms would be negotiated and outlined in any agreement with any sponsor or any naming rights partner. I also did want to clarify too, I certainly recognize Mayor Pro Tem didn't arbitrarily state a number. None of you arbitrarily stated a number. In staff's review of all of the materials that we have been privy to and have reviewed over this time period, the $60,000 amount was selected as a value that was representative of what we felt would be a comfort level for council, but certainly think it would be reasonable for you all to review those materials again and just get a refresh of that report. And if you find a different level of comfort, or if you want to continue with a review of all of them for a period of time, I think we can certainly support that.
If I may just add to the question regarding what would a naming rights organization get for their value. So in that confidential valuation report, it does identify at least what the consultant believes the negotiating terms would be around dollar value, but it also includes what the town would offer to that organization, company, or someone for that value. And it is different based on the dollar amount, it's different based on the type of amenity, where it's located, foot traffic, events, all those things. So there's quite a metric in there that, again, would be a point of negotiation, because the value to our consultant or the value to us may not be the value to the entity that wants to sponsor. And so they may have some other ideas around what brings their company, their organization value. And we would negotiate those terms specific to that deal. And that deal would then be reduced to a written agreement and a term of maybe a year, maybe 5 years, or so on. And so there's a lot of those moving parts that are within that that we would then, as was mentioned, bring back to you all in detail in the closed session.
Thank you, John.
Councilmember Patel, please.
So I may be comfortable with some value, after that closed session. Right now, as I said, we just are not privy to the information that was discussed. And in terms of PACs or political organizations, add me to that list of two. I'll be the third one to say I'll be open to at least reviewing that or considering it.
Okay.
Councilmember Johnson, please.
So we had a lot of really good discussion. I am still of the mindset that I think I'd like to review everything. And maybe eventually we'll get to some comfort level. And I think this goes to the point where I would think if a proposal came in that one or some of us were adamantly opposed to, then we could turn it down. And I would love to have that in our purview to be able to handle that. And again, I think that goes to a comfort level too in this whole process. And maybe over time we'll tweak and add to the policy of those companies or businesses will entertain and those we won't. But at least for the beginning, if that's in our purview, that would make me feel more comfortable.
We certainly understand that and support that, and I think that was part of our conversation in the work session, and we got the sense that Council really wanted to have some direct involvement. What the discussion point was to gauge what does that look like for you? What makes you most comfortable? Because we can certainly do all proposals, that's easy. But we wanted to give you an option to have the conversation around, is it everything, or is there some number in there or some threshold where you would be comfortable not doing that? And what I'm hearing is right now you're comfortable looking at all of them, and we can certainly bring those to you. And then at some point in time, you may decide to do something at a different level, a different threshold, and we're certainly open to having those further conversations.
Yeah, after hearing all this, I'm like, I don't need to see the benches. And I'd be interested in whether or not we actually have the right to say no to a certain sponsor and yes to another for free speech type things. So I think generating a policy that has a dollar value that we don't have to look at and give it to the staff to do the policy, I think that protects us from any kind of issues in that way too. But I think that we'll learn pretty quickly that we don't want to see everything. So I'm okay just seeing how we do it, looking at everything to start, and then take it from there. I think you've heard from everybody. Do you have what you need?
So I actually
on the first question?
I do, but that actually may give us a roundabout answer for question number 2. Would you be supportive of this updated guideline with the amendment, with the understanding that staff would amend that council reviews and approves all sponsorship, naming rights, proposals at any dollar value at this time?
For me, putting a name on something, I want to be able to say yes or no to that.
So essentially, any and all proposals would need to come through council for review and approval at this time. Because right now, the way that staff had crafted it was that we had broken it down with that threshold.
Right. Councilmember Rabati, followed by Mayor Pro Tem Rabati, followed by Councilmember Garamella.
Can you just refresh my memory to Councilmember Johnson's point? What exactly what are the rules around what can be accepted and rejected and for what reasons? I wasn't really looking for that, so I might have glossed over it, but is it like a store that can refuse service for any reason, or is it, is there some type of, as Mayor Cawley said, like some type of free speech implication or something?
Sure. So I'm going to pull up separately here on my laptop what are the guiding principles. And all of these were in one or the other of the 2 separate policies that you had already approved. in some form or fashion. We've just consolidated those and we've put those all under the guiding principles subheading. So right now, it indicates, in general, political organizations or entities are not eligible for amenity, building, or facility naming or presenting rights or sponsorship with the town. Businesses, organizations, or individuals whose primary products are firearms, tobacco, hemp, and/or CBD products and/or alcohol are not eligible for amenity, building, or facility naming or presenting rights or sponsorship with the town. Any other subject matter that does not align with the town of Morrisville's core values or is not deemed appropriate by the town manager and/or town council is not eligible for amenity, building, or facility naming or presenting rights or sponsorship with the town. Also, the town reserves the right to decline any sponsor or sponsorship proposal that includes factors that may undermine public confidence in the town's impartiality or interfere with the efficient delivery of town services or operations. The town reserves the right to decline any amenity, building, or facility naming or presenting rights sponsor or sponsorship proposal that appears to be in direct competition with town services. In all cases, the town reserves the right to reject any and all amenity, building, or facility naming or presenting rights proposals, sponsors, and sponsorship proposals if the criteria as outlined are not followed or if there is a potential conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest. Essentially, we wanted to provide enough flexibility, again, without being too overly prescriptive, that the town council still had the ability to use these guiding principles, use the town's core values, but still have those couple of criteria that previously existed in the policies that you had approved, should you have any need or desire or want to not approve any particular proposal.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Garamella, followed by Councilmember Patel.
Yeah, I'm totally okay with it because by the time it comes, there's a lot of conversation that will go in terms of the naming rights. Obviously, the screening will be done way before. It's more about the money and what you get is that comes down to. But I'm okay with the naming convention of what you have just read out.
So you're okay with staff making that decision? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty solid. You know, they're not just giving any other person to do something.
That makes sense. Councilmember Patel, please.
So I'm just not prepared to say yes or no to this question, provided that I just don't know what it is really. And perhaps doing one of those knowledge sessions for Councilmember Kathleen and myself on this subject, that would be helpful. And probably after that, I may have one opinion one way or the other.
Would anyone else like to weigh in on this one? Councilmember Kessler, please.
Echoing Councilmember Patel's desire to have future conversations about this, I certainly think that I would need more time to review this in full. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to say something else? Okay. I'm not sure if you got what you needed on that one.
No, not really, but I understand the, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Town Attorney Jones.
Yeah, I will just say that the mayor's concern about First Amendment is valid, and given the fact that council members Patel and Kessling have not had time to get up to speed on this, I think it would be beneficial for our office to review this policy in light of some of those concerns before it comes back.
Understood. Okay. So the last discussion point we had is, I don't know if this is even applicable now, because I understand that you all want to have additional discussion and feel more comfortable with our internal guidance, is really whether or not you would all feel comfortable authorizing the town manager to move forward with the written notice to proceed to the superlative group to move forward with phases 2 and 3. That's really the stopping point where we ended in October, which brought us back to this point, as council had requested to see an updated internal policy. So again, I understand this question may not apply now because you do want to have some additional conversation about the policy. So.
I raised mine in my mind, and I'll recognize you. I think that we could do those in parallel. I think our discussions will probably happen before they're bringing anything forward. So I'd support going forward with phase 2 and 3 at this time, just so we can keep this moving forward. Because I don't think that our decisions about what comes to us affects their efforts going forward. But that's one person's opinion. I'd like to recognize Mayor Pro Tem Rabani.
I think that it's fine if they go forward as long as they do so with the understanding that our internal policies are still under review. I agree. I don't think that that would necessarily make any difference to them, but I'm fine if they go forward. And I mean, phases 2 and 3 are where they start looking for actual sponsors, right? That's not an overnight thing. So, yeah.
Councilmember Patel.
So could you remind me what's part of phases 2 and 3?
Sure. Let me just put this back here.
You can go back.
So this is the recap of phases 2 and 3. Phase 1 was completed late last summer, early last fall. That was the valuation, the qualitative and quantitative analysis of the assets that the town has. So the market valuation, the full assessment, and the report that the superlative group provided back in October to the town.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with moving forward with that. So I'm okay with it, yes.
It's 3 of 6. Councilmember Johnson.
So I too think we can go ahead and start phase 2 and 3 and review our policy in tandem, keep things moving.
In tandem is a good phrase there. Okay, that's 4. The others are quiet about it. I think you got what you need for that, right?
Okay. Any other questions?
Any other thoughts or questions on this subject? Okay, good. Thank you very much for helping us navigate through this. I know this has been a while. Staff's been spending a lot of time because anything contractual is going to take a little longer. So it's good to do a little foundational work first. Thank you all very much.
We'll be following back up. Thank you.
Okay, good discussion, Council. We're scheduled for a break after this one, so we're keeping on going. We now invite Brittany Johnson, Planning Manager, to talk about public art.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. It is my pleasure to bring before you all a presentation concerning icon design detail selection. I ask that you please hold questions until the end after we kind of go through all of the information here. For a little background, on January 28th, 2025, Council selected the Icon Initiative, which are prefabricated, paintable fiberglass animals and sculptures, and this will be our second initiative to the public art program. Following Town Council's selection, the Public Art Committee, composed of staff from planning, public works, communication, parks and recs, and cultural resources departments, completed further research regarding the proposed program and its process, as well as conducting public engagement, design and application and approval process, and conducted budget and cost analysis. On November 25th, Council selected the butterflies as the official town icon. Again, as a reminder, the icons are prefabricated, paintable fiberglass animals and sculptures. They are unique and will represent Morrisville, and they will be placed along greenways and public gathering spaces. Process and timing, so on January 28th, staff proposed the Public Art Initiative, and council selected the Icon Initiative. Again, on May 27th, an administrative update was shared with council outlining the proposed project timeline, public engagement strategies, and artist selection. And on November 25th, council selected the butterfly as the official icon. A little on our Icon Initiative flowchart. So step one was our public engagement that consisted of social media and in-person outreach. This took place from June to September. Step two is Icon fabrication. This is our current step. This will take place again from December to March. Our main objectives are to select the icon, select the design details, select manufacturer, complete our contract execution, and complete installation of the locations, selection of those installation locations. Step three is our artist selection. This will take place again from February to May. Artist applications will be released. Applications and designs will be reviewed by the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Advisory Committee. Lastly, council will have the final and select the final design and locations. Step four will be icon installation. This will take place from May to July, and this will entail final site selection based on the design and site preparation and icon installation. Our fifth and final step will be implementation. This step will be a process where we evaluate what took place, and this will take place from August to September, and we will evaluate our alignment with the proposed public art plan. So a little again, as previously mentioned, step one was public engagement. Staff conducted social media and in-person engagement. Social media outreach, we introduced the project and solicited feedback. In-person outreach took place at 4 town events. Those events were Music in the Park Pride, Music in the Park Juneteenth, July 3rd event, and also Morrisville. Following the selection of the butterfly as the official icon, staff conducted research on butterflies to help inform the design. Tonight, you will be selecting 3 design details. One, that would be the butterfly family or form inspiration. 2, wing design, and 3, base design preference. Once these details are selected tonight, the icon manufacturer will be finalized and the contract will be executed, and installation location evaluation will be finalized as well. So the first of those 3 details, so design detail number 1 would be our butterfly family, and that would be form inspiration. So the swallowtail is the most predominant butterfly family in North Carolina. It encompasses several varieties, including the giant, the eastern tiger, and the spice bush swallowtail. The eastern tiger swallowtail is actually the official butterfly of North Carolina. So the swallowtail family does exhibit certain distinct characteristics. One would be that they have a tailed hind wing. So you can kind of see that here in all of the images. They have a triangular forewing and also are large in size and also represented by vibrant coloration. Our second design detail would be wing angle or posture. So there are 2 options here. The wings can be more flat or broadly spread, or we can have a more acute angle. So these are represented in the 2 options here. And again, these are for just ideas. These will not represent our official icon. Lastly, we have design detail 3, which is base preference. The final choice concerning the base for the icon, the base can be more artistic. So you'll see here where it's more of like a grass finish, or the butterfly can be on some sort of stone or leaf. Or you can see here where it's more functional and it's more of a simple kind of functional mount. And again, these may be adjusted based on the final design for constructability, just with that caveat. Once the icon details are selected, again, the icon fabricator will be selected and design and fabrication will commence. Town council will have an opportunity to evaluate the computer-generated 3D drafts prior to the creation of the final cast, and that will be through an administrative report in March or April, depending on timing. And then once the icon design is complete, installation locations will be selected. We're looking at selecting 4 to 5 locations to start, and that will be based on, okay, of course, final sizing along greenways or in public gathering spaces, and also possible locations would be Town Center upon completion, Morrisville Community Park, Church Street Park rather, Cedar Fork District Park, Indian Creek Trailhead, and the fire station on Harris Mill. Lastly, artist selection for the first round of installation. The application and designs will be reviewed by the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Advisory Committee. Town Council will select the final designs and prioritize installation. Following the first round of installation, the review process is anticipated to be completed by Parks and Rec or Advisory Committee or by the review party that is identified within the forthcoming public art plan. So I do have a few questions for you all tonight. And so I have about 3 questions for you all. We will take them one at a time, but first, if you have any questions for me before we jump into the 3 questions that I have for you all.
Ask your questions.
All right, question number 1. Is council comfortable with using the swallowtail butterfly as our form inspiration?
Mayor Pro Tem Rabadi, please.
Would it be okay in the interest of time if I just answered all of these?
Go for it.
Fine with swallowtail. I prefer the acute angle, but I'm willing to be swayed. And I would love an artistic statue base. My thing, I guess, would be if it's going to be significantly more expensive, then no. I don't think we need it, but if it's not significantly more expensive, I do think it would be nice to have the butterfly on a leaf or something. But, you know, again, not married to it, just think it would be nice. Thanks.
Perfect way to start. Councilmember Kessler.
I'm comfortable with the swallowtail butterfly. I would prefer broad wings. As the flat surface is more accessible canvas to be painted on, and I think it would be able to see more of it from more angles, I suppose. And then an artistic base, I mean, that would be nice. And an additional detail, it'd be nice if there was information on the specific butterfly. I don't know where it would live, but you know, what is the swallowtail? You know, why is it important in North Carolina? Why are butterflies important, generally speaking? I think that would be a nice educational moment for people.
I'll go ahead and answer some questions. Swallowtail is fine. I like the acute. It looks more action-y. Artistic base, please. I'd also be interested in the possibility of having hints of M's, either in the base or on the wings. Also, I like the idea of, I don't think MAFC was listed as one of the places. I know we already have a mural there. MAFC, Morrisville Aquatics and Fitness Center, I think that would be nice. Anywhere that's high trafficked. And I don't like that we're limited to 4 to 5. I'd like to have more. We're paying for the cast, we're paying for an artist. Let's go ahead and do 6 or 7, wherever we think that they'll be interesting in town. I know we're staying within a budget, but I'd be willing to put a little bit more into it to make it more interesting for more people around town. Councilmember Johnson, please.
So I'm fine with the swallowtail. I think that's a good choice. I like the broad, the flat. Remember back in the day, I was concerned about the real estate. I wanted as much real estate as possible for an artist to paint on. So flat, and then I'm going to agree with Mayor Pro Tem Rabadi. I like the artistic base, but if it's outrageously more expensive, I think that could go.
Councilmember Garamella, followed by Councilmember Tell, please.
It's funny that I see Swallowtail. I have a fish Swallowtail tang, and he's a release, but I think I like the butterfly colors better. um, I don't really have preference about broad or flat. It's a butterfly is a butterfly, but anyway, and Swallowtail colors are really nice. Again, no preference on artistic stature based on the cost. I'm okay either way.
Councilmember Patel, please.
So yes, swallowtail butterfly is good. I would prefer broad wing versus naked angle, and artistic statue base as long as it's not overly expensive.
All right, just to confirm, Councilmember Patel, you did say broad base, correct? Broad wings?
Yes, broad wings.
Okay. All right, then I think I have consensus all three questions. For number one, we are all comfortable with the inspiration being swallowtail. For the wing angle, I have five that have voted, 3 in favor of broad and 2 in favor of angle. So the majority would be for broad placement of the wings. And then also all in favor of an artistic base, but with the cost consideration. All right, I think I have what I need.
Thanks for walking us through all that pretty quickly. Well done. And when do we see you next?
Yes, so you will be receiving an administrative report in either March or April, which will have the 3D model for you all, have that final review. And then moving forward, we will be going to Parks and Rec so that they can prioritize artist applications, and then coming back to council once we are picking the final location as well as the design that the artists are putting forth.
Okay.
Did we land on the acute wings or the flat wings?
Broad, so flat and broad.
Excellent. We are scheduled for a break at this time, so please, we'll take 15 minutes. Please reconvene at 8:08.
Nice little meeting.
Okay, we are now back from break. We now invite Shandy Paget, Inspections Director and Special Event Coordinator, and Sydney King, Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Director, to the podium to discuss special events.
Good evening. Thank you so much, Mayor, Council. Appreciate the opportunity tonight. First time flyer here. Thank you so much for having us tonight to talk about special events and that process. I appreciate the opportunity, and I do want to take a moment to thank senior leadership for giving an opportunity to run with this project. It has been a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to see where we'll keep going with that, so thank you. So about the special event process, the special event requirement for a permit comes from the UDO for planning. It requires a permit when you have events that are going to have high attendance, use of parking lots, roadways, organized runs, walks, anything that the space and facility is being used outside of its normal approved process. So the purpose of the permit is to give staff an opportunity to review what's going to happen and make sure that it's safe for both public and private events. With the special event process, what we decided to do is a thorough evaluation of how staff was feeling about the process and also our stakeholders. So when we started looking at special events, one of the things that I did was schedule meetings with each of the department heads, and they sent it out to related staff who were part of special events. We had sessions where they could talk about what were pain points, what was going well, and then started creating basically a list from there of how we wanted to start tackling what were things that created roadblocks in the process. We also have set meetings with external stakeholders. So I have met with some different folks within the community, those who have numerous events, and we have sat down and talked about what's working well, what's not. We have gotten very candid feedback to help us in the process. So the idea is that we're all hearing from each other and learning, and hopefully making the process easier as we go through it for everybody. So this is our special event review team. We have 6 different departments that are represented. Each of these departments is looking at different items through the special event review process. When the plans and permits come in, it gets initiated by planning, and then it goes out to these folks for them to look at the various items related to their department. Part of our focus with this team has been looking at how do we get to yes. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're always going to be able to approve everything as is, but what are some ways we can think outside the box? What are solutions that we can come up with to help the event be successful and to make sure folks feel like they're being guided through the process and being helped versus maybe being told you can't do X, it has to be Y. We want to give the reasoning behind it and help them understand and guide them to make it a more positive experience. So some high-level processes I'm going to talk about with each department. I won't read each single one to you, but I wanted to explain a little bit of what everybody's doing. There's a lot going on with the special events, and I think it's important to highlight the good work that staff is doing. So with the fire department, the major functions they're looking at include event safety and security, and how are they going to respond to provide emergency operations, access, and support. Fire department is also responsible for issuing any fire department related operational permits. Those come from the fire code. That's typically going to be tents, inflatables, and then fireworks permits. And that is woven into the special event process to help the applicant have a one-stop shop and not have to apply for 5 or 6 different permits. We do as much as we can within that special event permit. All the departments you'll see are responsible for attending pre-event coordination meetings. Those are done with the applicant after their first review, and that's to help them understand any feedback provided by staff from the review process and allows them to ask questions and explain various facets of their event, and it may answer what staff had listed as corrections before. And then all of the departments also participate in post-event feedback. That happens in 2 ways. Every single special event permit has a review that happens at the end that we call a post-submittal review. Staff will provide their comments there of how much staff time did their departments have that maybe were present in events. If they notice that there were event successes or areas of opportunity, they'll document that. And then for town events, we also do a internal staff meeting to do a incident action review, if you will. And then depending on the event and the feedback provided for the special event coordinator role, I will then meet with those applicants or stakeholders to talk about, you know, any feedback from staff. I do invite every single applicant to provide us feedback and outreach and to meet. So far, I've not had anybody take me up on that, but it's there. So the inspections department, this particular function looks at anything to do with building permits and related to the special event. So if you have temporary structures that are over 120 square feet, it does require a temporary structure permit. Most of the time, this is going to be stages that we have at the various events. So the inspections department team will actually go out and conduct an inspection of the stage before it can be used. They're looking at means of egress. They're looking at accessibility, making sure that all can get to it. And then also what we're looking at that runs across many departments is the temporary certificate of occupancy process. What that is when we have a building permit for a space that has not been fully completed and received a final CO, they may be very close, and we have had spaces want to hold a one-time special event. It could be outside in the parking lot. It could be inside with some of the use in the parking lot. So we have a process to help them get evaluated for that and provide for the corresponding inspections with that. Staff is also looking at restroom counts and electrical safety. Our Parks, Rec, and Cultural Resources also is one of our reviewing departments. They're looking at facility availability, and not just is it available, but does the space requested accommodate the number of people and the type of event that wants to be had. And this particular department has their dual purpose because they're doing a lot of the town events, scheduling and coordinating, and then also reviewing at the same time. They are also evaluating traffic management for when shuttles and off-site parking are going to involve town property. We want to make sure that's gone through an approval process. We look at the event dates for private events and town events. Do we have any overlap? We want to make sure folks are not caught off guard if we find out that we have an event and they have one, and maybe not going to have traffic congestion issues, or we'd planned on using the same space. So trying to make sure that everything is looked at up front. And they're also looking at the weather considerations for town property. If town parks have to close, the event will not be able to move forward. So they're constantly monitoring the weather and then letting those applicants know if something seems like we may have some weather issues so that we can stay ahead of that. The planning department is looking at community impacts with their review. As I had said before, the special event permit comes from the planning department's UDO. So they're heavily involved in this process, literally taking it from beginning to end as far as moving it through the system, processing the applications, collecting the fees. They're really managing the entire workflow related to the special events. Also involved with it is the food truck permit process. That is a separate permit that food trucks have to get, and they maintain that for a 12-month period. They pay a particular fee. Planning looks at grease disposal and different items. And then during the special event process, they're verifying that any food truck vendors within the town do have an applicable valid permit with us. We also look at, the closure of the roads. Planning is evaluating if any of the roads are DOT, then they will have to have separate DOT approval for those closures. And then planning also is scheduling and leading all these pre-event meetings, and as I said, initiating the reviews that are happening and everything as well. Our police department functions, major portion is safety and security, including crowd management. They're also looking at the traffic management and evaluating how they are going to collaborate with fire, public works, if we need to have an incident command post, and they're coordinating the staffing for that. There's a lot happening behind the scenes with PD to make this happen. Part of also what they're looking at is for town events, they will provide the lost child setup station. That's something that Lieutenant Allman put into place this year. We were very excited for that, and that was based on feedback that we received as a department from the July 3rd event last year when we did our post-action review. And police is also participating in all of our meetings that we're having as well. Public Works is also one of our reviewing departments. They're looking at the facility services and operational coordination. If it is town events, they are providing additional services such as event setup, takedown, coordinating that resource delivery to make sure what we need is there, tables, chairs, tents, drinking water accommodations, and they are coordinating with police and fire for that emergency management support. They're also setting up the sites, putting them back if we have things that we need to repair or put turf, etc., waste management, sanitation, and then if there are repairs after the event, taking care of that as well. So with the coordinator role, this is new that we started this last year. I'm currently serving for that, and a lot of this is the cross-departmental collaboration and bringing everybody together. One of the things that we started is there is proactive event outreach to recurring events. So every month I actually reach out to anybody who has had an event in the past, and it's about 3 months prior to when we've seen them, to initiate some conversation, ask them if they're ready to submit, and try to encourage an earlier submittal. We are seeing success with this. Right now, we have 24 applications that are in review, in process. Not all of the events are happening at the same time, but folks are responding earlier when we're using that outreach. We've also looked at workflow enhancements, implementing those as applicable. I take a second check at the permit corrections for detail and accuracy. We're trying to limit any new corrections coming up on a second or third review. So at that first one, that applicant getting all the information they need, and then we start whittling it down versus adding new. Monthly, our staff meets everybody who's a reviewer, in addition to other department members who might participate in special events. And we go through every active permit that we have, what's going well, and then making sure everybody is communicating and aware of what is happening within the town. Also providing support to on-site events, and then coordinating any needs that there may be, and currently assisting with special event pay support. All right, so with special events, often you will hear Tier 1 and Tier 2. So I wanted to provide this snapshot. This is from the Planning Department's special event application packet. It's an informational packet they put together just to explain the difference between the two tiers. Tier 1, we're expecting a higher attendance. There may be fireworks, something with higher risk, I'll say. Tier 2, we have smaller events. The attendance is going to be less than 400, 5 or more food trucks. They may have just some parking items, and then use of a public or private lot. If an event has a function out of Tier 1 and a function out of Tier 2, their permit will be a Tier 1. And then the difference of those is it's the review time and then the application fee. There are no proposed changes for FY27 for any of the fees related to the applications for special events. So you can see the application fee for a Tier 1, it's $100. There is a late fee of $250. Those need to be submitted 60 days in advance, and staff have 10 business days to get the review done. Tier 2, it's a lower cost threshold and a shorter time for submittal, and then also a shorter turnaround time. It is based on the additional information that we usually have to review for a Tier 1 since they're a larger event. So high level of the review process. The application is submitted through the online portal. Everything is paperless. We're no longer taking paper. The permit fee then gets assessed, and once the applicant pays, then their permit goes into review for staff. There are 11 reviewers on the review. So you may have departments, for example, fire, you have 2 reviewers out of there. One who is reviewing solely for operations, that's Chief Oswald, and then you have the fire marshal's office evaluating for fire prevention and fire code. Comments are provided back within either of those 2 periods based on the tier, either 10 days or 5 days. And then the applicant has to respond back to the comments, upload any new documents, and then once everything's been addressed, the permit's issued. You may have additional inspections the day of the event. That's coordinated through either the inspections office or fire marshal's office, depending on whose department is responsible for what needs to be inspected. A little bit about the permit history. You can see fiscal year 21, pretty low, COVID, and then as we were coming out of that, steadily going up. Fiscal year 26, those numbers were for July 1 to the end of January. We had 32 permits issued. So these are not applications received, these are permits actually issued with the way that we run those numbers. And we are right on track to stay in line with last year's numbers. So a little bit about what kind of work we saw coming through for fiscal year 25. Between the staff, we did 1,631 reviews. So that's a lot just from special events. And this group is doing fantastic, so I gotta give them kudos for this. We received 68 applications. We ended up issuing 62 of those. 18 of our applications were events that projected 1,000 or more attendees. So we are seeing a lot more permits with larger events. Of the applications, 25 of those were for town events. And then our average submission time to permit issuance is 43 days. The reason you're seeing 43 days is a couple of different things. One, when the applicant submits their permit, we send the invoice that day or within 24 hours. If they don't pay it immediately, it doesn't go into review. We have some applicants who pay immediately. We have some who wait a week, some who wait 2. I monitor them, and then if I don't see payment made in 2 weeks, I'll just send them a friendly reminder that, hey, this is out here. So that can contribute to the time. Then when the applicant receives their corrections, depending on how long it takes them to respond back, that can start impacting. I have a couple right now. It's been 2-3 weeks, and we haven't received corrections back. Again, I monitor it so that if we start getting closer, I'll give them a little nudge of, hey, we're still waiting for these. Also being cognizant of not wanting to make people feel like I'm hounding them of, you just got these 2 days ago, how come I don't have comments back? So trying to give some time for them, but also recognizing they may have missed the email that came. So giving them that prompt of, this is ready for you if you are. With a strategic plan this year, we did add components for the special events for any departments who are part of the special event review process, really looking at enhancing the process and supporting our external stakeholders, and also looking at improvement efficiencies of the process. One of those goals is to complete all of our special event reviews on or before the due date 95% of the time, and then to initiate the post-submittal reviews that happen within 2 business days of event completion. So when that event is done, within 2 days, staff need to all get their post-submittal review. That way it's fresh in their mind and they can add in any comments that they have. And then where we determine that after action reviews are needed, that those corresponding departments do participate. So some of the accomplishments that we've had with the teams is we started, as I said earlier, we started with a to-do list after I met with the various departments and then just having different meetings. It started very lengthy. It was 100+ items. And I am very excited to say that we have done 60 process enhancements or checking the box of we looked into something that somebody had said, this is a pain point and how do we resolve that? So that's been a great accomplishment, and a lot of this has to do with the second point, which is leveraging the software capabilities. We have this software that does a lot, so we have been implementing automations where we can and cutting out manual steps that staff are having to do. One of these accomplishments is on the town website now, there is a food truck open data access link that lists all of the active food truck permits in town. It cycles every night at midnight with real-time data, so permit applicants can know right away, is a vendor that they're looking at, does that vendor have an applicant or a current permit, or maybe they have to take the steps to get one. One of the other ones that I feel like is a huge accomplishment, so I want to draw attention to it, the special event conditions. Previously, planning staff would have to manually type a letter in Microsoft Word and give them all the conditions in an event. Pick your trash up, you got to have everything clean. And it could be 10 to 20 conditions that were put on there. Ben, who's the Development Services Systems Manager, was able to set up check boxes. All they have to do is check the box. It manually pushes out a letter and an email when that review is done. So huge time savings, and I feel like a big accomplishment in just showing our testament to being efficient with the software that we have. Couple items with our after action reviews that we identified. It was the lost child procedure and also looking at accessible parking. We had heard that there were challenges with accessible parking for farmers market or different events that we had concerns with once we started having food trucks. So making sure that those who needed accessible parking would have access to that. And then we started the process with, as I said, having earlier notifications to folks who apply more than once a year or are recurring applicants so that they're getting that notification, monitoring of the status, and just providing that extra level of service and touch points with our applicants and stakeholders. So as we look forward, our current fiscal year progress, our goal was to hit 95% of our reviews being on or before the due date. We are super close, 93.86. Staff have already done 1,005 reviews. It's a lot of work happening for folks. And we do recognize things happen that sometimes we can't get that correction in, but I can tell you this team is actively trying and they're constantly getting stuff done, or I'm getting a message of this might be a little bit late, I'm working on this last couple items. So huge progress has been made with this particular area. We also did a complete overview of the application itself and then provided custom field changes that are currently under review by planning to provide increased clarity to the applicant and also for staff. We identified some custom fields just didn't give us enough information or maybe we're not clear. So once those have finished going through the vetting process, then we'll get those built into the software. We're also looking at creating plan review checklists so that each department has their own tab within the software and can ensure, yes, I looked at all of these items. As the events are getting larger, we're finding that there are more things that we say, oh, we hadn't considered that the last time, or we need to add this for the next time. So helping to build that, because with how many different types of reviews and roles that staff serve, we want to set them up for success with this. We're also in process of creating and implementing a decision tree for special event cancellations so that we can all have a consistent process of if there's a weather that we need to cancel it for, or if there's something occurring that maybe staff feels is unsafe, what's going to be the proper channels to follow for that. We're also looking at areas of the food truck permit process and if there are ways to improve that. It's a collaboration with planning and also looking at what is Wake County looking at or other counties as they issue food truck permits, trying to evaluate what can we not do if we're duplicating processes that another entity is already doing. And then we're also looking at the special event pay policy to ensure we have applicable and consistent application of that, and that would be applied towards future events at the time in which that particular policy is finished. So proposed fee adjustments, this is an opportunity for us to share with you with special events what fees in the FY27 budget process we would propose moving forward with. So feel free as we get to the end, if you have questions, this is a great opportunity to hear from you and feedback. We didn't want these to just show up in the budget and then you have questions about it. So this is part of what this is today. So currently for inspections, we have a temporary structure permit. It is already approved for $80. We just want to clarify in the fee schedule that it's per structure, not per event. We sometimes have much larger events that may have 5 to 10 structures and the $80 is not applicable really for that. So it should be per structure, not per event. Food trucks, this is specific to Parks and Rec and is not to be confused with the planning department's food truck fee. So Parks and Rec has a current vendor fee for food trucks that participate at town events. Those vendors currently pay a flat rate of $75. What we found is that may have some food trucks not want to participate if it's a smaller event, and it may be cost prohibitive. And on the flip side, for larger events, that may not be adequate. So we're proposing a tiered rate change and clarifying a structure of large events versus medium events and small. So large events, 2,001 persons and up, a flat rate of $100. Medium events, 301 to 2,000, $75. And then small events, 300 or less. And then I have provided the events that those would affect so that you could see that. That particular fee is in line with our counterparts in the comparisons. Parking lot rental. This is also a proposed new fee. We have received several requests over the last couple years about renting town parking lots for use, and we have not had a fee for that. And what we were looking at is if we charge folks for a shelter rental that they're not using in a field, the cost becomes very high. And their only need was the parking lot. So we propose to offer an alternative for folks who need that use with flat rates based upon which park they would like to use the parking lot for. It is per event and is the parking lot only. And Cedar Fork District Park, we are proposing a higher rate of $500 because it has more parking spaces. Church Street Park and Morrisville Community Park in Shiloh are proposed at a $300 flat rate. And then you can see that we did do comparisons for parking lot use at Wake Med Park in Cary, and then also Cary Middle Creek. The facility rental deposits. We currently have a deposit that covers both any use of the park, that even if it was a special event or not. We are proposing to have a deposit that is specific to special events. So it is called special use deposit because these are larger events that have more folks in attendance. There may be more use of the park, increased counts for restrooms and things like that. So that deposit we are proposing to be 25% of the total rental or $200, whichever was greater. And that was to help based with that extended usage and to ensure that if we have repairs that are needed, there is enough deposit there to cover any current contractor rates for the repairs. The next proposed fee is a special use facility cancellation. So we already have a cancellation fee in place, but it doesn't account for special events. Because special events are taking up more of the rental space and it prohibits other folks from renting and using, we are proposing to have a percent-based fee for that starts at 60 days prior to the event. That allows staff an opportunity to retain part of that. And then if the town happens to cancel or close the facility, the deposit and the payment would be fully refundable, or if Parks and Rec had to cancel a program or athletics league. Church Street Park, we have one change and one new, the cricket batting cages. This particular one is already in the fee schedule. I don't have it up here, so I'm going to tell you what those two rates are. The current rate for resident is 20 and non-resident is 45, and this is showing to change. Cindy, I think I have a 35, thank you. I was like, no, right. Okay, sorry, resident rate 30, non-resident 35. And then this proposes to change the resident rate to 30 and the non-resident rate to 45. That is because with these particular cages, it can require public works staff to come work additional hours for the preparation of those. And then the other fee that is new, it is the cricket pitch special use field preparation. So when we have special events that need the cricket park, to play cricket itself, the fee would be $450 for the prep of the park, and then we provided, it's the rate plus material, and how that was calculated is staff hours and the material for that. Then we have Morrisville Community Park. This change was to the current 26 fees, half-day resident 125, non-resident is 250, and then you have your whole days of 175 and 350. We're proposing to increase Morrisville Community Park because of the table capacity, and that way it is aligning with the existing Church Street Southern Lot Park fees. Going forward, over the next 12 months, Parks and Rec already does continuous evaluation of their fees and fee structures. They will continue to look at the current fees that we have, whatever is approved for FY27, and how that touches special events. That is really the focus of the fees that were suggested here tonight, was those fees that are related to special events. So with that, I will open the floor to questions.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Rabadi, please, followed by Councilmember Patel.
Well, the first question on everybody's mind is, who is this cutie in the dinosaur costume? Wow.
So This was one of the pictures taken from Boo Bash. I went through all the Parks and Rec fee files, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this one. So
That's a good one. So first of all, thank you for what must have been an insane amount of work. And I know that you're doing this as a stretch assignment, and that just makes the quality of this entire presentation that much more meaningful. So I really appreciate that. I've done a few stretch assignments in my time myself, and I know that it's no joke. So thank you for that. Could we go to the slide about the parking lots? Because the thing about only charging for the parking lots, I understand that, you know, people aren't using the facilities or the fields or whatever it is. But the fact is, if someone has rented the parking lot, no one else can use those facilities either. Because you're not going to rent Cedar Fork District Park, and if someone has already rented the parking spaces, whatever you're going to do at Cedar Fork District Park, you're going to need those parking spaces. So my understanding is that the reason that people have to reserve the whole thing is because they're effectively tying up the whole shebang anyway. So is that not the case, or what? Do you have any thoughts on that?
So I'll speak, and then I'm going to ask Cindy to help assist. But in our conversations as we looked at this, the parks could still be used by those who are pedestrians or who are choosing to walk, bike ride. We were trying to come up with, I'll say maybe a middle ground, because the fee was very excessive and high as we looked at the whole reservation. But you do have a valid point. But I'm gonna go ahead.
Well, I guess my point, like, I understand that people would still be able to come and go to the playgrounds. They always can. I mean, we don't like rope the place off or anything, but the point is that no one else can rent that facility and use it effectively because there won't be any parking. So that, I guess, is my point. That's the only kind of hesitation that I have about this, because I feel like we might be closing ourselves off to full rentals and not being compensated for the difference in cost.
You are correct. The times that we've been asked to utilize, or people to utilize the park space or the parking lot, have been off times. So a lot of times we don't know if anything's going to be coming in there. So the opportunity to gain a fee or revenue on the park during those times, that's why we were looking at that. For instance, there, HSNC and BAPS often ask to utilize the park. And most of the times it's on weekends where we may not have anything or no rentals. That was the most recent one. And so what we were having to do was look at the entire park and look at how much each field per hour cost. And so the rates were, I think the last one that we did was over $2,000. And they're just not gonna pay the $2,000 just to park. So that was the reason that we wanted to come up with a parking rental fee for that, for those instances that we can just rent the parking space.
So how far in advance are we willing to rent out the parking lots?
That's a great question, and that's something that we can talk to our team about. A lot of times it's 2 to 3 weeks, sometimes a month, when they start asking about the parking spots. So we know pretty much in advance when somebody's going to rent the space.
Yeah, nobody can set up a special event of any size in a
Right.
Okay,
But we could set a parameter on that very easily.
Yeah, honestly, as long as that's the case, I'm much more okay with it. But when I first read this, I had that question. And then the only other thing is, could you just page through to the end? I had one more thing. Oh, no, you know what? I think this is a process question. So as I think both of you know, I held a special event in Morrisville. It was a company picnic. And so I had the opportunity to go through the process as, like, from the other side, as a user. And it was great. Like, the staff's very attentive. I loved the review meeting, like the whole thing, great. But it occurred to me at the time that if we could figure out a way to collect money for things like the police, the trash collection, as a pass-through, and so that people could actually do it. I'm not saying this is like a for now thing, but maybe an end state could be that there's a checkbox. Do you want us to arrange for the police? Check. You know, do you want us to arrange for trash collection? Check. And because I think that part of the, kind of the, like the disconnect of the whole process. I had never done anything like this before, but part of like the disconnect and the feeling like I never knew what was going on wasn't staff's fault, but it was just the fact that I had to coordinate with so many different people. And it was, that part was a subpar user experience. So, you know, just, I think we ought to think about that. And, you know, if we do it as pass-through, great. If we add something on as a service fee, also great. But I do think that having that as an option would just make it a better user experience.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'll also add, police does currently charge for the off-duty officers. We have worked with Lieutenant Allman. He actually now has a set correction to provide more details to folks of if they choose to add officers outside of what his requirements are, how they can do that, but making sure that they know that that service is available should they need it, and how do they go about scheduling that.
But even the original, just, I didn't want any extra police. I only wanted, you know, the police that I had to have. But even that, like, so I went to the website they told me to. It was $150 per police officer per hour or whatever it is. And then, so like first they scheduled me with carry officers, and then I had to call them. And then, like, I just feel like there's an opportunity to improve the user experience not with our staff, but, you know, other people maybe don't have as high standards as we do for customer service. And so there's an opportunity to improve customer service there.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilmember Patel, please, and then myself.
So thank you very much for this integral presentation. I'm sure a lot of time and effort went into it, so I appreciate that. I also want to talk about the parking lot rental. If we rent the parking lot, do we reserve certain spots for the park use, or would we rent out the entire lot?
It's the entire lot, right? The entire lot.
Would it be possible to reserve certain spots so someone who's coming to use the park doesn't have to go back or struggle to find a parking spot?
So I believe that the parking they get all of it, and it would just be people walking, biking, et cetera.
I'm sorry.
So if we did do the parking lot fees and they rented the parking lot, it is the whole parking lot. So if folks were coming to use the park and there was not available parking at that time, it would be accessible then only by either someone greenway, bike, walk, et cetera.
Okay, I understand that this probably, the request that came in was for weekend parking, and I assume that people tend to use the parks more over the weekends. So if we have ability to reserve certain spots for park use, then it'll make more sense to rent it out. And another question I had was, if you could go back to the slide where you had the rental fees for the cricket pitch, and so we have for cricket pitch special use, you have the same fee for both the residents and non-residents, and
Yeah, that one's a flat fee across the rate, across both resident and non-resident.
okay.
So that's an add-on, so that would be part of when they rent the whole facility, shelters or whatever, that would be an add-on fee for that. Only if there's cricket pitch usage or maintenance for that.
Got it, understood. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
So, yeah, parking lot. People are trying to reserve it on weekends.
It has been varied. It's been weekends and during the week as well. So it's just been varied asks.
So Yeah, because some people are tracked out and stuff too. So I'd be interested in perhaps not renting it on weekends at all, or making it the maximum you can rent it 75% of parking spots, which is enforcement is a problem, but I mean, someone wants to go to Morrisville Community Park and all the spaces are taken. They can't park in the school across the way. There's only neighborhoods. I want our parks to be used unless we're having Boo Bash. And then people understand that they're gonna have to walk. But I mean, I'm just not so comfortable in telling people they can't use the parks. Although we do that for big cricket events too, but I mean, these are different than these kind of one-offs that people might not understand why is the park closed?
Absolutely.
It's gonna be really hard to communicate that. So people should know that if they're trying to go to the park, unless there's a major league cricket, they should be able to park in the park. One thing that's more of a more philosophical, high level for the council to think about is partnering more actively with cultural organizations who are having these events in the parks, these private events. I'd be very interested in knowing staff's assessment of whether or not it's worth building community by having a checkbox on a special event permit. Would you like to partner actively with the town? And then they get maybe a 25% discount on all these fees, and we are part of the branding of that event if we're interested. So if they're doing Nepal Day, or we've done the Kite Festival in the past, I think that helps build community, and if the town's brand is associated with these events that are seen as being just cultural, if the town's part of it, then more of our residents will feel comfortable going. If it's a Nepal Day celebration, I'm not sure if non-Nepalis are going, and they would benefit from going. So if it's the town of Morrisville and Nepal doing it together, for example, but there's lots of organizations doing lots of things. So if we can work with them, I think that's better than the alternative, which is just holding them at arm's length. I think it's a great way for us to build community. I remember the Parks and Rec Department, the slogan was, "We build community." So I like the idea of actively building community, even though that might reduce our revenues a little bit, because that's the balance. I mean, we could give everything away for free, everyone participates, it's nice, but then we have less resources to do other things. So that's more for the council members as part of our budget discussions, because these will come back as part of the budget. Councilmember Garamella, please.
Shandy, I think it's a lot of work. I know a lot of conversation between me and Brandon over several months, and this is a good document, but I would be really interested to put this to work. So if I want to open up a special event permit, I want to go through that process and see where I struggle, or I want to have my user experience, because the end of the day, there have been several instances where less than 24 hours, less than 48 hours, permits have not been given. I call Brandon and it's going back and forth, or the police is not available at that time, they were supposed to be there. All kinds of things fall in place, and I'm not the person who's putting the permit. I don't know anything about it, but have heard so much issues around it. Especially, one area that I don't see is food permits from the Wake County, which has not been mentioned here. That is something like I've seen that you have to go to Wake County and get it. Like as Anne is saying, the process is there, but that one person has to go so many areas all across. And after some time, it just frustrates them to even continue to do things in Morrisville, and I just don't want that experience. And you guys are doing the best you can, but from a user experience, we want them to come more and more, and I honestly want to just have a dummy exercise, go through it and see where I feel the pain, that people feel the pain, and at least give my 2 cents as to how we can improve upon. If not, it's already improved, So at least I can stand up to say, no, this is how the process is, this is how it works, I have done it. Because right now, I don't. I'm just seeing, what is seen here.
Yeah.
And it's pretty hard, because time and again, over years and years and years, we have heard issues around it, and it's been a long way coming. So, but I think it's getting better, and kudos to you. You know, you have the passion and the initiative to take it and put it all together. But I would like just open up one with you and like see where it goes and learn my time.
Yes, we can absolutely do that. And I made some notes about the different processes, so we'll definitely look into that. I would like to add, when you had mentioned that, you know, permits not getting issued, and yes, several times Giselle would reach out to me, what's going on with this permit? Hold on, look. So what we identified through that is when they asked if I was interested in helping with this, I was like, oh, I have all these ideas for the software, because there is so much it can do. So one of the things that we started with, we actually have a dashboard page that you decide what workload you want to see. So we built Part for special events. So it tells me, I get notifications when something comes in. We have notifications that the emails are going out to the applicant immediately as soon as somebody finishes that last review. If somebody is late, I see that, and I see it the day that it's due, and then I give a little nudge of, hey, it's due today, so that we're helping minimize some of that. Because sometimes what happens too is, some of these department reviewers, this is the only time they will touch that software. So it's very easy to overlook something. So we wanted to provide that support as well to internal staff of, here's how we can let you know you have something coming up. We have had some staff who said, can I get an email every time a new application comes in? Other people don't need it, so we have something that goes just to them. So there's a lot of capability to personalize what people are getting and to help with the process. And then to your point as well, every week I go in and I look to see what is not issued, why, and to make sure that we don't get to that point, so that we're not doing the 48-hour scramble of what happened here and, you know, did we miss something? So.
And trust me, you know, when I say that, the issue is not the town 95% of the time, it is on the other side too.
Yeah, yes.
So, but they don't come and tell me that. They just tell me like, this is the deadline and we still don't have what to do.
Yes.
It's obviously not 95% you guys are doing the job and moving it. But from their point of view, it is too hard, like, okay, go and get Wake County food permit. You know, it's a 30 days or a 45-day permit process. And then coming less than 20 days before asking that permit, they just don't know what to do, you know? And so those are the kind of things, like, if we can grandfather, like, okay, we can give it on their behalf, like, we have a lot of jurisdiction kind of a thing, like, you know, I'm seeing all those emails going on right now with those, you know what I'm talking about. So like, we have a jurisdiction of those kind of things. So if we can incorporate, like, the other one is anything on Church Street has to go through Wake County. If we can get that override and say, okay, we are your authority, we can handle it. Give us the jurisdiction so that we don't have to go back and forth to Wake County or RTP, because the Church Street is jurisdiction of both. So some of those kind of things, you know, if it can be cut down, it tremendously helps all of us, not just you all, because we pretty much, I say in my words, you all are babysitting, which you can do much better job in other areas than just making sure that this event happens successfully, you know, but a lot of back and forth, you know, is going on, and I don't know what can be done differently to give a better user experience.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I'll make sure we look into that.
Thank you.
Councilmember Kessler, followed by Councilmember Johnson.
Can we go to the parking slide? So I'm not sure I necessarily have direction on this. I just have a general comment that I wish our town wasn't so car-centric and folks could access parks with viable alternative means of transportation, that'd be nice. Some of the comments about having spaces available for park use, that makes a lot of sense. I'm curious what types of events or applicants were asking for just using the parking lot.
The past couple have just been like for off-site parking. So they were just going to use the front part of the parking lot. 40 to 60, 70 cars is what they stated. They have some parking at their facilities, but just needed that off-site parking where they were going to run a shuttle service.
I was thinking that we were talking about having a farmer's market type deal where you could set up in the parking lot. That's not what we're talking about.
Another example would be like if an organization was having an event at, let's say, Church Street Park, and they needed use of a portion, let's say they rented the northern lot, let's say the field, and some shelters, and they needed the southern lot as a drop-off. We may consider renting them the parking lot, because then we wouldn't be able to rent the shelter or utilize parking for our basketball courts, multi-purpose court, or sand volleyball courts. So people driving in could use them, but the parking may not be available.
Yeah, I don't have any extra direction on that. I like the food truck tiering. I think that's very equitable for food trucks. And then I was wondering if there was any sort of fee waivers for underfunded or grassroots organizations, say if they have to cancel, right, due to unforeseen circumstances, a sponsor backing out, or weather or something like that. If this was an important event for them that they had to cancel and had to, again, could we go to that policy real quick, or that item?
For sure. Sorry, cancellation.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, if that would cause a specific organization a significant burden, one that wasn't as well-funded as some other organizations, I'd be interested in some sort of fee waiver for that. I don't know how many of those we might get.
Yeah, we'll certainly make that note. Thank you.
And that's all my questions.
Councilmember Johnson, please.
So, Shandy, thank you. Great presentation. Thank you. I'm in agreement with just about everything you have here. I too have a little bit of heartburn about this parking lot. So, the requests that have come in, have they been more at night or during the day?
During the day.
Okay. And maybe it would help me if I know you said we have 62, or last year, we had 62 special use permit, but how many of those, you don't have to answer this now. What would help me is how many of those were for the full use of a park versus, I'm assuming some of these maybe were just special events for a shelter? Or?
It definitely varies. Yeah, okay. We can find out that information though. I don't know that off the top of my head.
Yeah, no, and that's fine. And I don't need, I know, well, you talked about the 25 events that we have internally. All of those are not taking over a full park, but a lot of them are. Mm-hmm. And then I know of some other big events in town where they do take over a park. So maybe that would help, because us understanding that, because I too want to make sure our parks are available to the public, and if there's some way to allow that and to rent a parking lot, I think that would be okay. But I also want to know how often we really are taking these parks offline, so the public can't use them. Maybe it's a whole lot more than I think, or maybe it's not that much at all. So that would kind of put some context, around this conversation. That's all I have. Thank you.
Councilmember Garamella? What else would you like to talk about?
Nothing, because I think I'm the only one standing between you and the door.
That and some comments. So thank you very much for bringing this forward. We appreciate the details. And special events are part of what make Morrisville special, not only our own, but the ones that we help the community put on. So thank you very much for stretching to help us make these better. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
We've already done the action item, so we can skip 12. I would just want to say that if you want to check out our upcoming events, we have a full listing of our events. Please see our town calendar at www.morrisvillenc.gov. We're going to move on to council comments at this time. Councilmember Garamella will share first and will be followed by Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Johnson will be followed by Councilmember Patel.
Okay, so I'm going to be really short because we're probably all of us going to say the same thing. Thank you, Brandon, for keeping council updated last night on all the events here in town. I appreciate all the updates. We were kept informed all along the way, so thank you for that. And to Communications Director Erin Hudson and Fire Chief Dooley on the news last night, you both did an excellent job. I was watching the news every time, I kept changing channels to make sure I was up to date on what the news was covering. And you both did an excellent job representing the town of Morrisville. So thank you. And then to our community, some folks, I know we're probably all going to say this, some folks have reached out to me about where to help and how to help. And thank you for that. That is, Erin, you said it. That is our community. We here in the town of Morrisville, we help each other. So that's evident in the response coming from the public. So thank you.
Councilmember Patel, followed by Councilmember Kessler.
Still get used to it. I'll echo everything what Councilmember Johnson said, and I want to recognize and thank firefighters from Cary, Apex, and Morrisville. Also, I want to thank the town staff for really mobilizing quickly and also to Red Cross for supporting the displaced residents and people who stepped up to offer help. I had at least five individuals contact me personally to offer help, motel owners, people who have townhomes available, and none of them were from Morrisville. They were residents of Cary or Raleigh, and they all offered help. So that I truly appreciate everyone who offered help. Thank you.
Councilmember Kessler, followed by myself.
Echoing the other council comments on keeping us informed. I also had people reaching out and being able to share information with them on, how they could help. That was very, very good. I did want to mention, I've submitted a roundtable item on Thursday to discuss us voluntarily adopting the 2024 building codes for municipal buildings. I think that's relevant to this tragic fire. This building was built in '96. The attic's not sprinkled, it's vinyl siding, wood construction, it's a tinder box. And that's why building codes are important. It's built in such a way that you can safely evacuate, right? That's really good. But modern building codes certainly have are more safe. So I just wanted to mention that.
My turn followed by Councilmember Rabati. I got a chance to go by the site today earlier and spoke to some of the residents who are kind of outside waiting to check on their things. And one thing that I heard over and over is how quickly our first responders got there and how thankful they were at the professionalism that they saw. So I thought that was really meaningful, having Red Cross there and Neighbor Up and other organizations that reached out to all of us, asking how they could help, and then our comms team helping us understand where to point them was very nice. So we hope that all affected are able to get back to their lives and rebuild stronger with the knowledge that our community cares about them and their families. And as Councilmember Patel said, it's the entire region that steps up to help those in need, which is really, it says a lot about Wake County and the people who live here and choose to live here and how they help each other. So thank you all for all of that. Mayor Pro Tem Rabadi, please.
Thank you, Mayor. As Mr. Rogers always said, look for the helpers. And, you know, in this case, the EMS were the helpers, our staff were the helpers, the entire community were the helpers. And I think that, you know, if there's one somewhat bright lining on a very dark cloud, that may be it. I also wanted to congratulate Councilmember Kessling on his wedding, which happened since our last meeting. And we don't want to lose sight of the joy in the midst of the sorrow. So congratulations, and I know I'm joined by the entire council in wishing you many happy years. Thank you.
Town Manager Zudema.
So I spoke to the media, several of us spoke to the media this afternoon, and you know, what I shared with them was, you know, this is what it's about. This is why we invest in a fire department. This is why we invest in training. This is why we invest in equipment. I can't say enough about the CAM model. I reached out to the managers and the fire chiefs in Cary and Apex today to say thank you. And of course, they all went, yeah, it's what we do. And it is what they do. But, you know, I mentioned to the media, you know, we often talk about first responders that are running to the fire or to the danger, and everybody else is trying to get away from it. And that is exactly what happened last night. Our first due engine arrived, recognized an opportunity for a save, took action. And, you know, this is, again, to the training, I think this is worth noting, is that was a fill-in captain, fill-in supervisor on that engine. It was a fill-in driver who pumped his first fire ever as a pump operator. And it was a firefighter that was well-trained and experienced that went in with a hose line. And thank goodness he was a stout fireman, because he was carrying a large hose line that would normally be a couple people, but he was able to manage that line to allow the other firefighter to enter into that apartment where they couldn't see anything except fire and rescue this elderly female off of a chair and bring her to safety. So if that, you know, doesn't start to make you at least a little emotional, I'm not sure what would, respectfully. But so proud of, you know, what they did. And again, the training, this wasn't three fire departments coming together trying to sort out who does what. This was a fire department that came together because they already trained together. They already know each other's equipment. So everything that we do in that regard paid off last night. If there's ever any question about should we continue to invest in public safety, is it important to have this truck or that line or this equipment? Yes. I mean, they saved 5 lives last night. They also potentially saved, you know, other buildings there. There were other exposures. So can't say enough good about that firefighting staff, and certainly our partners out of Apex and Cary. Just an amazing job. Would also compliment the police department. You know, not only were they there to help with traffic control, and, you know, this was right on 54. This was in the middle of stuff. And then they unfortunately had a homicide in the middle of this worst we've seen in 25 years fire that they responded to and apprehended a suspect who has now been charged with that homicide. And then Chief Dooley would tell you that in the midst of all of this, they were able to fortunately call some additional firefighters to come in to staff the 2 reserve engines because another fire broke out in Apex. And so, you know, that, but again, the CAM system handled that. And so we supported that. And I would also reach out, I believe Durham County provided us some assistance in terms of a standby. Don't want to miss them as well. Again, want to commend Erin, got that call that nobody wants to get, which is, hey, you got to go and you got to know now because we need to get on top of this. So she was out there last night. She was out there again today. Also, we mentioned our Public Works Department. They were out there this morning with a loader helping to move things to assist the investigation. Also need to thank not only our Fire Marshal's Office, the Wake County Fire Marshal's Office, the State Fire Marshal's Office, and also the State Bureau of Investigation, all of whom were out there en masse. When I went by that scene this morning, there were 10 or 12 people working on that investigation. And we have fortunately now been able to turn that building back over to property management. May have some information forthcoming as to what their findings are. I'm not going to share any of that. It's not my place until they know what they want to release. And then I think Giselle just shared that folks are going to be able to get in tomorrow escorted to the apartments that are still structurally sound to try to retrieve items that may not have been too badly damaged. Again, also compliment the Red Cross. They responded very quickly. Also want to compliment Neighbor Up. I called Leanne at I don't know what time last night because I knew she'd answer the phone, and she did. She was like, I thought you might call. I'm like, here I am. Please help us. So, they jumped on that as well. So I'm going on a bit, but this doesn't happen every day. And so, you talk about it takes a village, and it took a village to get through what happened last night. It'll continue to take a village to continue to move forward, supporting those 30 units, 70 people that don't have the apartment they thought they would be going home to. So again, super impressed with our staff, and thank you for continuing to support them and give them the equipment and the personnel they need to do things safely.
Thank you, sir. Very powerful. At this point, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved. Second.
A motion from Mayor Potem Rabadi, a second from Councilmember Garmello. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that is unanimous 6-0. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much. See you on Thursday for our work session.